What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 8 Decigrams Chapter 146. The Power of King Hōgyoku Mundo, Suppressing Squad Zero. Chapter 146. The Power of the King of Hōgyoku Mundo, Suppressing Squad Zero. Kirinji Tenshiro was about to vomit blood. He originally thought that this so-called explosion could only last for a few dozen times at most. But he never thought that the explosion was almost endless, and each explosion was equivalent to one of Stark's Sero. Even though his combat power was very strong, facing this level of explosion, he still consumed a lot of Ryūjin. Stark fiddled with the musket in his hand and said lazily, "This is the ninjutsu taught to me by Naya-sama. It uses detonating talismans to continuously summon detonating talismans. After it is activated, it will trigger a concentrated continuous explosion. As long as it touches the target, it will continue to detonate until the target is blown to ashes." At this point, Stark said in a somewhat strange voice, "But, for some reason, I didn't consume any spiritual power in my body at all." Naya, who was sitting cross-legged on the wooden dragon, raised the corners of his mouth and said, "That's because I haven't released the chakra spiritual power yet. Same as the Quincy created by Yūjin. The power of the Quincy all comes from Yūjin, the ancestor. After drinking Yūjin's blood wine, the soul will be engraved with the words of power by Yūjin, and gain the power of the Quincy. This is also the reason why a large number of Quincy died in the world when Yūjin used soul recovery and sanctification. Because that power itself was given to them by Yūjin. The same is true for the ninja, created by himself. All the ninjutsu and abilities learned require the spiritual power called chakra to use. And all these spiritual powers come from himself and the sacred tree. The spiritual power they use in ninjutsu now is directly transmitted from the void of the sacred tree. It's okay now, but in the future, I will distribute the power of the sacred tree to Shinigami and Manos Grande, the human beings all over the world. As long as the mind moves, infinite Tsukuyomi will exert the same power as soul recycling. Saint. Take back all the spiritual power given out." Kirinji Tenshiro's pupils dilated, looking at the boy sitting high on the trapped dragon in disbelief. You guy. Tens of times more dangerous than Yūjin." At this moment, his heart was shaken, and he even felt fear. You know, even if Yūjin and Aizen Sōsuke join forces, it is still a trivial matter in the eyes of the Zero Division. Yamato didn't even take it seriously, and the boy in front of him is more dangerous than those two guys combined. If you continue to grow, Soul Society, no, all three worlds will be changed by you. Shudoro Senjumaru's eyes were solemn. Just a few words, she was sure of the danger brought by Naya. This is a human boy who is more dangerous than Yūjin and has the characteristics of a Soul King. No one knows how far he can grow. Maybe in the future, he can even affect the stability of the three realms. Behind Shudoro Senjumaru, 6 golden puppet arms spread out, and her spiritual power also started at this moment. Pull out the soul-slaying sword and enter the liberation posture. The soul-slaying sword turned into an embroidery needle. If you don't look carefully, you can't even see the shadow of the embroidery needle. BK. The Shinigami present couldn't help but look at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. The Shinigami of the Zero Squad have fought with Naya, what should they do here? The old man Yamamoto snorted coldly and knocked on his cane. The meaning was very clear, that is, let them fight and don't intervene. The Shinigami present Shinigami couldn't help but smile bitterly. This was a really troublesome situation. On one side was the Zero Division of the Soul King Palace. On the other side was Naya, who had done them a favor. As soon as he stepped on the ground, Shudoro Senjumaru turned into a golden flash and rushed towards Naya at the top of the wooden dragon at an extremely fast speed. "Human boy, your ability is too dangerous. Let me seal it. Don't worry, it won't threaten your life." Shudoro Senjumaru said in a solemn voice. Nell and Tia, the two women, showed a hint of anger in their eyes. They drew out their soul-slaying swords without hesitation and were about to enter the posture of returning to the blade. Ulquiorra was faster than them and had already entered the posture of the Black Demon. "But, you Shinigami, do you really think you can make choices for others at will?" Naya looked at Shudoro Senjumaru coldly. With a thought, the Rinnegan fluctuated, "Wheel grave be on you." In the invisible shadow world, in the posture of 4 six paths, Nanaya's shadow clone holding the 6 paths staff appeared. Give Shudoro Senjumaru a head-on blow. The flying classical beauty flew back at a faster speed than when she came, and with a bang, she hit the ground hard. A huge pit was blasted out of the clean and tidy streets of the Seireidii. It's the previous move. Kyoka Suigetsu looked solemn and recognized the 10 moves used by Naya. But at that time, the move used by Naya could only delay the captain-level strongman, and could not cause severe trauma to the opponent. But now, Shudoro Senjumaru was almost crippled by a single move. Ahem. Shudoro Senjumaru climbed out of the pit with difficulty, and looked at the 4 shadow clones in the sky in shock. They're just clones, they actually have such power, and almost broke the spirit clothes I was wearing, which is the Death Tyrant suit I sewed myself. Looking at the broken clothes on her body, she felt inexplicably regretful. If she had known earlier, she should not have brought Kyōka Tenshiro here, but should have brought Ichibei from the army. But it was too late to say anything now. Shudoro Senjumaru gritted his teeth and quickly swung the soul-slaying sword like an embroidery needle. The latter sat cross-legged on the wooden dragon and said lightly, "Susanoo, complete body." In an instant, the 4 shadow clones formed by the Wheel Tomb prison, Ryūjin burst out, forming an almost terrifying energy fluctuation. 4 different colors and appearances of martial gods rose from the ground. The moment he saw the 4 war gods, Shudoro Senjumaru was stunned as if he had been hit on the head. What is this? The 4 war gods, each of which burst out a Ryūjin with the power to destroy the world. It even made her feel dangerous. You know, she is not an ordinary Shinigami. She may be older than Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, and her strength is even stronger. If she were placed in Soul Society, in the 13th Division, only Old Man Yamamoto and Unohana Retsu could compete with her. She was so powerful that she actually felt threatened by the war gods formed by 4 clones. Without waiting for Shudoro Senjumaru to react, the 4 Susanoo war gods chose to attack at the same time. 10-Fist Sword. Susanoo 99, Kamui Reikuri. Yasukani no Magatama. The 4 divine weapons fell down like a blanket. Even Shudoro Senjumaru tried his best to defend himself, but was still hit by the 4 sacred weapons and was blown away. Wang Qianhao, boom boom. Shudoro Senjumaru's figure penetrated the entire Seirei like a cannonball. The wall was blasted with a big hole, and even shattered. Everything along the way was knocked open by it. Shinigami such as Hitsugaya Dashiro, Kashiwamura Sajin, etc., looked at Shudoro with a dazed look. Senjumaru didn't even know what to say. When he came, he was so impressive that he didn't even take the captain seriously. He looked like the boss. "I thought you were so strong, but you were beaten." They were almost beaten into 2 dead dogs. With a turn of his eyes, Kie looked at Kyōka Tenshiro, ignoring the explosion on his body, and said condescendingly, "Senjutsu Storm Release Light Fang." Swish, the white light flashed. It pierced Kyōka Tenshiro's shoulder in just a moment. Kyōka Tenshiro groaned miserably. Seeing this, Kie tilted his head and said lightly, "With your strength, you still want to compete with Old Man Yamamoto? Aren't you afraid that he will cut you with one knife?" Chapter 147. One-Handed Planetary Devastation, Creation of the Moon. Chapter 147. One-Handed Planetary Devastation, Creating the Moon. Kyōka Tenshiro looked very unhappy. The main reason was that the gap in his heart was too big, which was really hard for him to accept. He had just boasted a few minutes ago. As a result, he didn't even touch the shadow of Kie, but suffered a great loss at the hands of his men. Looking at Shudoro Senjumaru again, this classical woman was even worse than himself, wearing ragged clothes and limping towards this side. Chai curled his lips and had to look at them again. Old Man Yamamoto is the ceiling of this world. When Ryūjin Jakka appeared, the temperature of the entire Soul Society rose. Just a few small shrimps came and said they were comparable to him. After Liu Biyu died, can everyone fight Liu Biyu? Seeing this scene, the Shinigami of Soul Society became inexplicably excited. That's right, so what if it's Squad 0? The captain is the strongest. Captain Yamamoto. Kyōka Tenshiro looked at Old Man Yamamoto with an ugly face, and said in a deep voice, "Aren't you going to take action? Don't say you didn't see the potential of this human boy. He is more dangerous than you watch in Aizen Sōsuke. For the sake of Soul Society, for the world, for the Soul King, his power must be sealed." Shudoro Senjumaru also came over and looked at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni with a serious look. "I think so too. Now that such a big thing has happened, I think the Democratic Department will come soon. Captain, this is not only the order of Squad 0, but also the 46th Chamber, including our 4 major families and 177 clans." Tsuneyashiro Tokunada also persuaded Old Man Yamamoto. The expression of Captain Shinigami present gradually became solemn. They really didn't expect that Yoruichi could bring up so many forces, and all of them demanded restrictions on Nanaya's power. 0 Squad, 46th Chamber, 4 nobles. Is Nanaya's ability so dangerous? Is it annoying? One by one. You really think I'm a piece of clay, don't you? Without waiting for Old Man Yamamoto to respond, Naya raised his eyebrows, pointed the 5 fingers of his right hand at Kyōka Tenshiro, and said, "Nobles, 0 Squad, they're all a bunch of garbage. This world is not the law of the jungle. In that case, shut up, planetary devastation." The moment the voice fell, Naya clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand, and the gravity reached the maximum in an instant, acting on Kyōka Tenshiro. The ground collapsed, the house collapsed. The wall tore. Under the action of the strong gravity, the surrounding buildings collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and all smashed into Kyōka Tenshiro. The latter widened his eyes and looked at the oncoming material in disbelief. Damn, what is this? He swung the soul-slashing sword with all his strength, but even if he cut the wall into dust, the dust still stuck to his body under the action of gravity. In just a few seconds, only one hand of Kyōka Tenshiro was exposed. As a wall attacked, Kyōka Tenshiro roared unwillingly, but his voice and figure were all smashed back by the wall. Then came Shudoro Senjumaru, Tsuneyashiro Tokunada, and members of the major families present. They were all torn up by gravity amid the sound of horror. Under the swarming rubble wall, he was smashed into the center of the meteorite, and Ji Yin and his figure gradually became invisible and inaudible. The Shinigami present were all dumbfounded. Hey, this is too crazy. Kyoka Suigetsu couldn't help but said. In front of so many of us, they arrested all the people from the Zero Division, the Four Nobles, and the 46th Chamber. What else? Sui Feng glanced at him and said, are you going to stop Naya? Kyoka Suigetsu quickly shook his head. I don't want to do such a troublesome thing. And Kyoka Suigetsu pressed down the brim of his hat, raised a little arc at the corner of his mouth, and said with a slight smile. I have been unhappy with those guys for a long time. The other captains couldn't help but smile when they heard it. The guys in the Zero Division, because they are the direct subordinates of the Spirit King, have always been arrogant and rarely communicate with them ordinary Shinigami. The 46th Chamber and the Four Nobles are of the same blood, and they are not good people. It's just that no one dared to resist them in the past. Meeting Naya today was like hitting a brick wall for them. Ordinary Shinigami naturally didn't understand the captain-level communication, they just looked at Naya with admiration. How can a person be so powerful? As a human, he became the king of Hueco Mundo and saved our soul society. Zero Division, 46th Chamber, Four Nobles, he didn't spare any of them, he beat them all. Why is this meteorite still expanding, under the spotlight? Naya stepped on the top of the meteorite in an instant. In an instant, an angry voice came from the meteorite. Damn kid, you dare to do this to us, are you ready to go to war with our Zero Division? Be quiet. Naya stepped on the meteorite impatiently. The gravity of the meteorite intensified again, and the enemy who was smashed into the center of the meteorite felt even greater pressure and couldn't even speak. As the meteorite continued to absorb matter and expand, it seemed to have turned into a small planet. Gradually floating towards outer space. Stinky old man, make a moon for your soul society. Kie stepped on the meteorite under his feet, and then looked at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni with fiery eyes. I have no interest in those two trashes. How about, do you want to step on this meteorite with me, and let's go to outer space to compete? As soon as these words came out, the whole audience was in an uproar. All the Shinigami present took a breath of cold air. Created a moon. Can the meteorite under his feet grow to the size of a moon? And he wanted to invite the captain to compete in outer space. Is the location so high-end? Hearing this, old man Yamamoto narrowed his eyes, looked at Kie, and said, Little ghost, do you want to compete with me? Of course. Kie was not afraid at all. Although he has not yet devoured the fruit of the sacred tree, he has already reached the level of Super Six Paths. I admire your courage. Old man Yamamoto said no more, took off his clothes, and revealed his body full of scars. He pulled out the Ryūjin Jakka and said in a deep voice. Before, I was ambushed by Aizen Sōsuke, so I was in such a mess, but my strength is the strongest in 1,000 years. Those two members of the Zero Division, although they said they could match me, I could kill them with just one sword. So, be careful next time. The voice of old man Yamamoto reached the meteorite, and immediately made Kirinji Tenshiro and Shudoro Senjumaru frown. They had never sparred with old man Yamamoto, but they felt they could match him. Unexpectedly, the other party said that they could be killed with just one sword. Is he looking down on them, or is he telling the truth? Come on. Naya licked his lips and said, if possible, I would like you to join forces with that Yamato Shang. After the voice fell, he entered the Six Paths posture. Holding the Tien Numa spear, with 9 truth-seeking balls on his back, his white hair spread to his waist, and his skin was pure white, like a god high above. There is no need to go to outer space. Old man Yamamoto narrowed his eyes and said. Because the battle will end soon. The moment the voice fell, old man Yamamoto released the soul-slaying sword without hesitation, and said in a deep voice. Bankai. Zanhuo Tachi. The high temperature of ultimate spread, and the surrounding air was distorted as a result, as if the water molecules of the entire Jingling and Ting were evaporated. The surrounding Shinigami had to retreat, which barely avoided the danger of being swept by the flames. After releasing the soul-slaying sword, old man Yamamoto continued without hesitation. Zanhuo Tachi East Rising Sunblade. As the voice fell, all the flames around disappeared, leaving only the blade that looked like a charred dead wood. Kai's eyes lit up and smiled. This move almost killed me at the beginning, but now, this move alone is far from enough to kill me. As he said this, he swung the Tianju spear and slashed down. Chapter 148. The Strongest versus the Strongest, A Shocking World. Chapter 148. The Strongest versus the Strongest, A Shocking World. Quick, hurry up and take people away. Seeing Kie and the captain sparring, the parties involved didn't do anything, but the Shinigami who were watching were furious and ran away. They didn't want to be involved in the aftermath of the fight between the two monsters. Kyoka Suigetsu touched his chin, took the initiative to retreat to a distance, looked at Stark beside him, and said, how about finding a place to drink? Stark scratched his hair and put away his musket. Kaido. Wine, I've heard of it, but I haven't drunk it. I can go and try it. The two idiots from Hueco Mundo and Soul Society smiled at each other. The Shinigami around were all black lines on their heads, but they were reluctant to leave. They retreated to a distance and looked at the center of the battlefield nervously. Sparring is not fighting, but it is also watchable. And the most important thing is that both sides of the battle are the strongest of their respective races. The strongest Shinigami is Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. The strongest man, Naya. The battle between these two people will definitely be earth-shattering, and may even affect the situation of the whole world. At the moment when the Amanuma Spear and Ryūjin Jakka collided, the world seemed to return to peace, and then a roar resounded throughout the Seirei. Boom. Boom. The ground on both sides of the two people disappeared instantly, and the buildings on the ground also returned to zero instantly, as if they had never appeared from the beginning. These two monsters annihilated all the matter. Sui Feng was sweating profusely, and couldn't help saying, compared to my Bankai of Suzumaki, these two monsters are the real one-hit kills. Captain Ryūjin Jakka, the ultimate flame is integrated into the blade, but the flame is invisible, and the invisible is wiped out. Nanaya's Tien Numa sword even destroys the surrounding matter from the root. These two guys are monsters. The Shinigami and Manos Grande around couldn't help but exclaimed. In the meteorite, the spiritual observation of Kirinji Tianshilong and Shudoro Senjumaru was diffused, and the two also showed shock in their eyes. So strong, these two guys are so strong, much less fishy than me. Only Hayasabi can come in person to suppress this human. No, even if Lord Hayasabi may not be able to suppress them. Only then did they realize their previous stupidity. Although they were members of the Zero Division, in terms of strength alone, they were no match for the two monsters. Thinking about the big talk they had said, they even felt their faces blush. It's a very interesting knife. It hasn't been melted by my Ryūjin Jakka for so long. Old man Yamamoto squinted his eyes and looked at the Amanuma spear in Nanaya's hand, which was like a DNA spiral. The Ryūjin Jakka in his hand was already 15 million degrees Celsius at this time. It was already the temperature at the center of the sun. An ordinary soul-slashing sword, even in the Bankai posture, would be melted into molten iron after a few collisions with the Ryūjin Jakka at this time. But the Amanuma spear in Nanaya's hand didn't have a single scratch. When Naya heard this, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he controlled the spiral Amanuma U extension. While slashing down, he said, "Of course, this is a weapon that creates and destroys the world, and has the strongest hardness in the world. Unlike the Six Paths staff, the Amano spear will carry the owner's thoughts. As long as the thoughts are not shaken, this weapon will not be broken. Therefore, it is also Nanaya's best weapon. After dozens of collisions, countless large canyons have been cut out of the surrounding ground. Some were cut by Ryūjin Jakka, some were cut by Amano spear. The interweaving makes this place seem like a Jedi ruin, and inexplicably gives people a sense of déjà vu of natural disasters. The surrounding Shinigami are shocked. Those huge cracks, like large canyons, span several squadrons, as if they are going to cut the Seirei apart. It is completely unimaginable that this can be caused by human power. Old man Yamamoto narrowed his eyes, took a step back, his muscles bulged, and he clenched the soul-slashing sword and swung it down, shouting. Zanka Tachi North Heaven and Earth Ashes, the boundless sea of fire was compressed on a sword blade. Because there was too much compressed flame and the temperature was too high, not only did the surrounding space distort, but the knife even appeared purple. It was a flaming flying blade that had left the body. Seeing this, Kie became excited, and the 9 Magatama Sharingan turned, and he clenched his right fist and pointed it forward, saying, 80, God Airstrike. The violent Ryatsu acted on Kai's right hand. When the Ryatsu condensed to a certain limit, Kie aimed at the oncoming flaming flying blade and hit it mercilessly. In an instant, countless purple fist shadows formed in the sky. The highly compressed flaming flying blade collided with the purple fist shadow in midair, and the deafening explosion resounded throughout the jingling court. The shock wave blasted all the surrounding buildings into pieces. The captains in the distance had to take 2 steps back. Hirako Shinji felt the violent impact and couldn't help swallowing his saliva, saying, "It's really outrageous. This is the first time I've seen someone fight the old man to this extent." Muguruma Kensai's mouth twitched. Fortunately, when we defected, the old man didn't use Bankai. Other members of the masked corps who returned to the Seirei couldn't help swallowing their saliva. Atoribashi Rojiro said elegantly, "If the old man had used Bankai, we would have been killed one by one." Sarugaki Hiyori shuddered, kicked him hard and cursed. "Don't say such scary things." But in this case, Hirako Shinji came back to his senses and looked at Naya solemnly. "I finally understand why those people in the Zero Division are targeting Naya so much. Zero. Please give flowers Zero. Nene's strength is indeed a bit too outrageous. He is evenly matched with the Captain General." The other members of the masked corps nodded one after another. A human with such terrible strength. The Shinigami side cannot help but feel fearful. 014501503 Filu 182,561,091. Are east and north both ineffective? The old man Yamamoto narrowed his eyes and looked at the human boy not far away solemnly. "I didn't expect to be able to do this. After 1,000 years, he will be the once tyrannical Bankai Zankatachi. After further training, is divided into 4 moves: East, West, South, and North. Each move has a unique ability, but at the same time has strong lethality. If East and North are ineffective, Old Man Yamamoto narrowed his eyes and said, "Kid, the next move is equivalent to facing the sun. Be careful, don't get burned to charcoal." While speaking, Old Man Yamamoto's body was ablaze with blazing flames. The temperature soared at a speed visible to the naked eye. It turned out that he was wearing a coat of flames, which enclosed his entire body. The sun was scorching, burning hot, and the flames shot up to the sky. The space was distorted by the flames, and the heat seemed to ignite people. Old Man Yamamoto was like a god of fire in the flames, with flames wrapped around his body, as if he was wearing a coat of the sun, and he said word by word, "Zanhuo Tachi Shi Zan Ryu Yi." The moment the voice fell, Old Man Yamamoto, wearing a coat of flames, rushed towards Kie head on like the sun. Hiss, it really looks like a sun. Feeling the oncoming heatwave, Kie took a breath, and his expression became solemn for the first time. From his perspective, Old Man Yamamoto seemed to be attacked by a god of fire. The flames around him made him look like the sun. In the original work, it is said that Yamato Shang of the Zero Squad is stronger than Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, but he didn't feel that way. The flames exceeding 15 million degrees Celsius were already the temperature of the core of the sun. It was already the ceiling in terms of lethality. And that Yamato Shang, although he was powerful, if they really fought, he might not be able to beat Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. I really want to see who is better between you and that Yamato Shang. Kie muttered to himself, but his hands did not slow down. He pointed his right hand forward and said, "Kill the gray bones together." As soon as the voice fell, Kie seemed to have obtained the dead bone pulse in the Hokage world, and pale bones spread from his arms. Then came the palm, elbow, knee, shoulder bone. I remember this is dead bone pulse willow dance. After saying the name of the move, Kie stepped forward and hit the sun like Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni head on, laughing excitedly. Stinky old man, surpassing 6 paths dead bone pulse is not inferior to your remaining sun prison clothes this time. Chapter 149. The Remnant Fire Sword South. Fire 10 trillion Death Burial Formation. Chapter 149. Zanhuo Tachi Nan. Fire 10 trillion Death Burial Formation. Boom. 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 Above the sky, one red and one white, 2 figures kept fighting and colliding, so fast that people could only see the 2 white and red afterimages. The scorching flames filled the sky, and the Shinigami below were already swaying profusely. Under the continuous collisions, thunder continued. The 2 of them actually fought to a draw, venting their strength without scruples in an effort to defeat the other side head-on. Too powerful, this level of close combat. Unohana Retsu looked at the 2 figures in the sky enthusiastically. Mugaruma Kensai swallowed his saliva and said, "Captain Unohana Retsu, you'd better calm down. Those 2 guys are no longer in the same dimension as us. If you go up, you will die." Hirako Shinji smiled bitterly and nodded. "That's right, not to mention Naya, the captain's prison uniform alone can burn us to ashes. Although they are all captains, there are also differences between captains. For example, he is also a leader among the captains, Sanbeki, but he dare not approach Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, for fear of being ignited by the flames. Captain Hitsugaya." As the temperature rises, Ichimaru Jin's smiling voice came from not far away, looking at his former colleagues, smiling like a fox. "The weather is getting hotter and hotter. In this case, please make some ice to cool us down a little." Ichimaru Jin, Hitsugaya Dashiro looked at Ichimaru Jin, snorted coldly, and recalled many unpleasant things in the past. But in the end, he did not refuse, because there were already many Shinigami on the Shinigami side who were on the verge of being middle class. He took out the soul-slaying sword and waved it casually. Ice Dragon Tail. In an instant, a thick ice wall rose from the ground and rushed into the sky, even reaching the battlefield between Naya and Old Man Yamamoto. But under the scorching fire, in just a moment, the thick ice wall melted into water at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the water was evaporated into water vapor. The water vapor was burned into nothingness in a short time. Hitsugaya Dashiro immediately widened his eyes. It melted in an instant. Is the gap between me and the captain so big? He didn't fight the captain head-on. Just the heat from Ryūjin Jakka was enough to melt the ice wall. The ice of Hiranmaru melted. Don't be too disappointed, that's the captain's Bankai, the flaming clothes on him. The temperature has reached the level of the center of the sun. Kashiwamura Sajin comforted Hitsugaya Dashiro, but then he thought of a question. Facing such a high temperature, how can Naya bear it? Bankai Dagoran Hiranmaru. Hitsugaya Dashiro, who entered the Bankai posture, gritted his teeth and looked at the 2 people in the sky, waving the Hiranmaru in his hand. 1,000-year ice prison. The water molecules in the atmosphere turned pure white at a speed visible to the naked eye, emitting cold air, and condensed into a giant sky-high ice pillar. When the pure white ice pillar appeared, the surrounding temperature dropped rapidly. The Shinigami around couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Just now, under the captain's firelight, not only did they have difficulty breathing, but they even felt that their bodies were about to be ignited. Hitsugaya Toshiro smiled when he saw this, but his smile froze on his face before it lasted 2 seconds. Because in the sky, Naya only approached the towering ice pillar, and the ice pillar was annihilated into nothingness by the invisible thing. BB. It's the bones on Naya's body. Kuretsuchi Miyuri's eyes lit up, greedily looking at the white bones piercing from Naya's body. I can see that it's those bones, which have unimaginable power, and can annihilate everything they touch into nothingness. That's why Captain G's flame didn't hurt Naya. No, it should be hurt, but the remaining flame can't break through the defense formed by Naya Ryatsu. The Shinigami present were shocked. Naya, the captain who didn't even dare to approach them, was in this state. Not losing the upper hand, and even faintly gaining the upper hand. It hurts, you old man. Kie felt the burning sensation on his hand and looked at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni opposite him with a dark face. I have already used the co-killing gray bone and used the truth-seeking ball to protect my body. But it still cannot completely isolate the high temperature of 15 million degrees. Fortunately, he has a strong recovery ability now, otherwise he would be steamed alive. But Kai's face is dark. Old man Yamamoto's face is even darker than his. Little ghost, are you teasing me? Old man Yamamoto looked at Kie in anger. He originally just wanted to spar with this hateful human boy to let him know the height of the world and not to act recklessly. But now, he has used 3 of the 4 moves of East, West, South and North. This little ghost is still alive and kicking. It's like slapping himself in the face. Don't be so nagging, don't be so nagging. Kie freed his free left hand and pointed it at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni and said, if I don't fight you, do you think others will give you the opportunity to use the solution? As soon as the voice fell, white bones pierced Kai's palm. Gongsha gray bone. Yamamoto's pupils shrank, and he subconsciously wanted to retreat, but the speed of the white bones stabbing at him was too fast. Before he could retreat a few meters, the sharp white bones pierced his prison clothes. In an instant, compressed by endless flames, with a temperature of 1500 degrees Celsius, the flame-colored cloak like a flame was blown away. Even a piece of Yamamoto's flesh was annihilated. What do you think, stinky old man? Kie raised his mouth and said with a little pride. This is Gongsha Gray Bone, which is known as a superkiller that flies beyond time and space and decays with bones. If you admit that you are not as good as me, I can let you go. Maybe it's because the sacred tree was created by myself. Even if I haven't eaten the fruit of the sacred tree yet, I still have the ability of Otsutsuki Kagaya. Now I can be said to be Super Six Paths. After hearing what Naya said, old man Yamamoto was so angry that the veins on his forehead jumped. Little brat, you dare to be so arrogant in front of me. You really don't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. As the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, even if Yamato from the Zero Squad came, he had to call him the captain. No one dared to be so arrogant in front of him. In a rage, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni finally made up his mind, swept his eyes around the Shinigami, and said in a deep voice. Get out of the way, you can't bear the next move. The faces of the nearby Shinigami changed drastically. Without saying a word, Mai ran behind him. The aftermath of the previous battle was already unbearable for them, and it was obvious that the next scale would be even larger. The Shinigami captains present looked at each other in bewilderment. Hitsugaya Toshiro couldn't help but ask, why, because we captains have to retreat too. Seeing the crowd dispersed, old man Yamamoto breathed a sigh of relief, and then stabbed the Ryūjin Jakka in his hand deeply into the ground. The violent flames ignited the ground and spread in all directions. In just a moment, all the surrounding buildings were melted. The floor tiles and ground of the Seirei were all burned into charcoal, black and red, and constantly burning with flames. Even the sky was affected, like the dark color after the fire, revealing an unsettling, terrifying atmosphere. In the shocked eyes of countless Shinigami, Manos Grande, and others, skeletons with boiling flames kept crawling out of the charcoal-colored ground. Wow, the old man is really angry, and he even used this trick. In a certain izakaya, Kyoraku Shunsui held the wine cup in his hand and looked at the sky with a little surprise. It's just as the rumors say, it has the terrible power to control life and death, destruction, and the world, its incredible sea. Stark nodded, and couldn't help but side with the wine cup. It's true, the old man on your side has a very hot temper. Hearing this, Kyoraku Shunsui turned his head and looked at Stark a little strangely. Aren't you worried about your king? Stark couldn't help but smile, thinking of the power that Kie had shown, and said, instead of worrying about our king, it's better to worry about your captain. The drunk Lillinette said in a daze while holding the wine glass. The king has the power to control life and death and create the world. Chapter 150. Destruction vs. Creation, Resurrection of the Dead. Chapter 150 Destruction vs. Creation, Resurrection of the Dead. Zankao Tachi Nan, Fire 10 Trillion Death Great Burial Formation. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni was deep in the scorched earth, slowly saying the name of this move. Tens of thousands of skeletons, burnt red, as if even their bones were stained red by blood and flames, slowly crawled out of the ground. The spiritual power of each skeleton was particularly amazing. In terms of strength alone, any skeleton was not weaker than the Shinigami of the Seirei. The stronger skeletons even released Ryūjin close to the captain level. At this time, the skeletons crawling out of the scorched soil were not just tens of thousands, but endless, like evil spirits in hell. Asterisk 7. In the crowd, Sarugaki Hiyori's face changed, and he quickly looked down at his right hand, where there were actually traces of burns. It was just a rub. She looked at the skeleton breaking out of the ground in shock. Just now, her arm accidentally touched the skull, and she was burned by the high temperature on the skull. Don't touch these skulls. Hiriko Shinji sweated coldly and said, these skulls seem to be related to the captain. Each one is very strong and has a terrifying high temperature. The captains present all changed their faces. They looked at the skulls on the charred land in disbelief, which were burnt red and looked particularly hideous. If it was just one skull, they would not take it seriously. Oh 3, but there are more than tens of thousands of skulls like this. If they were besieged by so many high-temperature skulls, even the captain would be worn to death. Hey. Muguruma Kensai scratched his hair and looked at the high-temperature skeleton in disbelief. Wait, where did these monsters come from? Not only do they all have extremely strong Ryūjin, but they also have such a high temperature on their bodies. Where did they come from? Jashiro Yukitaki silently looked at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. This is the Bankai of Ryūjin Jakka. The old man Yamamoto was majestic, standing on the scorched earth, and said lightly, Zanhuo Tachi Nanhuo Huo 10 trillion deaths great funeral formation. After using this move, Ryūjin Jakka's ultimate high temperature will awaken the ashes of all the dead who died under my sword in the past. And these scorched red skeleton legions are to protect the enemies who are killed, and after they die, they will also be used by me to kill the enemies endlessly. After hearing the captain's introduction, the Shinigami and Manos Grande present all took a breath of cold air. Looking at the burnt red skeletons all over the mountains, they felt a chill on their backs, and stepped back subconsciously, revealing a horrified expression. Wait, so many skeletons, how many people did this Zamai kill? Grimsy couldn't help shouting. Tyr Harabel's eyelids twitched, and said, this old man is a monster, even our hollows have never killed so many lives. Sui Feng couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Captain, you are worthy of being the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, but this method is too cruel. Not only will you kill the enemy, but you will also integrate the corpses and souls left by the enemy into the soul-slaying sword. It's like a puppet skeleton of Ryūjin Jakka. This is completely different from the consistent purpose of Shinigami, and it's no wonder that the captain doesn't like to use Bankai. Under the gaze of these people, tens of thousands of burnt red hideous skeletons, one after another, tried to grab Naya's body. Even if the bones of their companions were stepped on, they did not stop. Even if they stood up on the bones of their companions and stepped on the shoulders of their companions' skeletons, they still rushed forward relentlessly. This scene made people's scalps numb. Crack! 7 Yoruichi crushed a skeleton with his feet. Even though this skeleton seemed to be a Quincy in his lifetime and had a captain-level battle record. But it was still crushed into powder by Kie. The undead skeleton awakened from the flames is really a bit troublesome. Kie licked his lips and slapped out with his right hand. Invisible repulsive force erupted in the center of his palm. Boom! The burnt soil exploded. The hundreds of burnt red skeletons standing on it were directly shattered by the repulsive force. But this level of destruction and killing is nothing to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of burnt red skeletons. More burnt red skeletons stepped on the bones of their companions and attacked. What do you think, kid? Are you going to admit defeat? Old man Yamamoto felt that he had won, so he looked at Kie and asked calmly. While speaking, old man Yamamoto also pulled out the soul-slaying sword that was stuck in the scorched earth, with flames burning on it, bursting out a powerful Ryūjin. It seems that while maintaining this move, old man Yamamoto can also launch an attack. Kie licked his lips, his eyes were hot, and he slapped the ground hard, saying with a smile. Stinky old man, this is just the beginning. Summoning technique 6 paths pain. Summoning technique 10 tails. As 2 white smoke exploded, the brand new 6 paths pain appeared in the center of the battlefield, with an indifferent look, and started the cleanup work directly. Heavenly Path Shinra Tensai, Hell Path Aging. Human Path Bankai Suzamushi Hyakushiki, Crazy Cricket. Shura Path Flash of King Hollow, Hungry Keto Furious, Kongshu. Animal Path Sip Evil Concubine. The new Pain 6 paths showed their new abilities at the same time. Bankai, Return Blade, Hollow. In just a few seconds, the surrounding scorched red skeletons boiling with high temperature were all blasted into pieces by the new Pain 6 paths. In the second smoke, many hideous wooden monsters appeared. Some were humanoid and some were wolf-shaped, looking extremely scary. As soon as these monsters appeared, they met the remaining scorched red skeletons without hesitation. The two sides fought evenly matched. The Shinigami and Manos Grande who were watching fell silent after seeing this scene. 014501503 Filu 182,561,371. After a long while, Sui Feng said in a complicated tone, Kie, Captain General. These two people are equivalent to an army each. The other Shinigami captains were speechless. They could only look at the two armies in the battle with a wry smile on their faces. These two monsters are not only extremely powerful individually, but can also summon such an army that is more terrifying than the criminal army. Just these two monsters, if you take out any one of them, Qian can flatten the entire jingling court. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out again. Naya, holding the Tien Numa spear, appeared in front of old man Yamamoto in an instant, laughed and stabbed the Tien Numa spear down and said, "Stinky old man, there are talents in the country, and you are no longer my opponent." 260 at this point, Nanaya's mouth corners raised. "But I still want to thank you for letting me basically master the power in my body." "Don't be arrogant, kid," Yamamoto's eyes flashed with anger. With his age of thousands of years, he was actually suppressed by a boy who was less than 18 years old. This really made him, the strongest Shinigami in the 1,000 years, angry to the ultimate. While swinging the knife continuously, two burnt red skeletons broke out of the ground below and tightly grasped Nanaya's ankles. Taking this opportunity, old man Yamamoto chopped it down without hesitation. Naya held the Tien Numa spear to meet it, in the harsh sound of metal. Nanaya's reincarnation Sharingan turned and said, "Reincarnation. Innate technique." As the voice fell, old man Yamamoto was shocked to find that the skeleton army that was supposed to be controlled by him was no longer under his control. Those undead souls under the knife. At this moment, the bones actually grew flesh, and there were signs of resurrection. This scared old man Yamamoto, and he quickly lifted the fire 10 trillion death burial formation, fearing that his former enemies would be resurrected. Taking this opportunity, Naya pointed his right index finger at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's heart and said with a smile, "Stinky old man, I won, tailed beast cannon, huh." When the flash in his hand was about to shoot, Naya suddenly felt something. The purple Samsara Sharingan seemed to penetrate the space and saw a space that vaguely emerged next to old man Yamamoto. Spirit King Palace. Raising his eyebrows, Naya pointed his right index finger at the palace captured by the Samsara Sharingan. 10 Tails. Tailed Beast Cannon. Chapter 151. Invasion of the Soul King Palace, Battle against Yamato. Chapter 151. Invasion of the Soul King Palace, Battle against Yamato. The tailed beast cannon, which is similar to Sero, was fired. At the moment of explosion, the space in front of Kie was distorted. The tailed beast cannon also disappeared at the same time. Seeing this scene, old man Yamamoto was stunned for 2 seconds, and then his eyes suddenly widened. "Kid, where did you attack?" Chai retracted his fingers and said casually, "I don't know, it should be a very important place, I see a lot of defense." Although it takes a king key to go to the Soul King Palace, Kie saw the trace of the Soul King Palace. As long as it is seen, it will be captured. So, Kie happily used Kamui to send a tailed beast cannon of 10 tails in its prime into the Soul King Palace. After hearing what Kie said, old man Yamamoto's scalp suddenly numbed, and he showed a rare expression of horror. "You threw that thing into the Soul King Palace." The 10 tails just now tailed beast cannon made him feel like he was facing death, and he claimed that it had the power to destroy the world. He might not die if he was hit by a direct shot, but if the Soul King Palace was hit by a shot. At the same time, Soul King Palace, Zero Division Palace. He was tall and strong, bald, with very thick eyebrows and a beard that reached his chest, and a broad figure. He was dressed in death hagi, and wore a white wide-sleeved coat-style haori with the Zero Division emblem embroidered on the back. He had a large crimson rosary hanging around his neck, and wore high-heeled wooden clogs on his feet. His eyes were filled with only the whites of his eyes. Yamato Shang. Looking at the information in his hand, he frowned. "Nanaye, what on earth is this guy? He is obviously a human, but he has such a powerful power, but he has nothing to do with the Soul King." He felt quite puzzled. "You know, the reason why Yuwatch was able to grow to this point is certainly due to his own factors. But more importantly, it is because he is the son of the Soul King. The reason why he did not deal with Yuwatch at the first time is also because of this reason. Because he tried to make the other party a new Soul King. And the Soul King is the wedge to maintain the stability of Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the present world. After so many years, even the omniscient and omnipotent Soul King is no longer stable and may be broken at any time. For the stability of the 3 realms, the second Soul King must be created. But, what's the matter with that human boy?" Yamato Shang was puzzled, because he didn't understand Nanaya's ability at all. There are only 4 abilities in the world today. Shinigami power, Manos Grande power, Annihilation power, and Full Manifestation power. But Nanaya's ability is completely different from these. It's better to say that he created a new power at the source. But this is the exclusive ability of the Soul King. It's impossible that the human is the second Soul King. Just as Yamato was still thinking hard, his face suddenly changed. He saw the space in front of him twisted and a black sphere shot towards him. "What is this?" Boom! The devastating wave reverberated in the Soul King Palace. 10 tails tailed beast cannon was like a nuclear bomb, spreading in a semicircle in all directions. The 5-0 band ridges surrounding the Soul King's main hall, the Soul King's great palace, were torn apart by the violent shockwave. A huge mushroom cloud rose out of thin air. The violent shockwave raged, causing a seal to appear over the entire Soul King palace. It was the 72 barriers. It was these 72 barriers that separated the connection between the Soul King palace and the Seirei. The process of traveling back and forth was extremely complicated. But today, under the impact of the 10 tailed beast cannon, 12 of the 72 barriers were torn apart. Such a huge explosion attracted the attention of other members of the Zero Division, who looked over with disbelief. Hey, what happened? The national palace was blown to pieces. The person who spoke was Naya Wangyue, who created Zanpakuto. He had black punk curly hair that was longer than his neck, wore wide-framed sunglasses, and wore a grass-green shirt and slippers. He looked more like a hip-hop rapper. Could it be that you watch and the others are coming? The person who spoke this time was the Southern God General, Hikifuna Kiryu, who was known as the King of the Valley, and was also the previous captain of the 12th Division of Urahara Kazuki. She had long purple hair, a spatula-like hair accessory, Uzumaki lines on her cheeks, black lip gloss, and 2 belts. She was also a plump and obese lady. Seeing the big explosion on the Zero Division, both of them showed an incredible expression. You know, the Soul King Palace is the core of the Soul Society, and the entire Godei 13 was created to protect this city. And today, a Zero Banli Palace exploded. The center of the Zero Banli Palace is the Soul King's great inner palace, where the Soul King lives. It's that human boy, called Naya. Yamato Shang walked out of the smoke and dust, looking at the sky with a serious look, Taguchi said. He directly tore open the passage to the Soul King. While speaking, Yamato Shang felt that he could not calm down, and his hands were shaking. Not only was he afraid of the power of the 10 tailed beast cannon. More importantly, it was because that human boy could break into the Soul King's palace at any time. That would cause damage to the stability of the world. What? Nimiwu Wangyue and Denjo Kiryu both widened their eyes at the same time. The former could not keep calm and asked quickly. You mean, the human boy named Naya tore open the space and launched an attack on you? Yamato Shang nodded with a heavy face. The two couldn't help but take a breath of cold air, and the latter said with a serious face. Can the attack across the space still make you so embarrassed? Yamato was stunned for a moment before he realized. In the explosion just now, not only were his clothes tattered, but even his proud beard was blown to ashes. The rosary hanging around his neck was broken into 3 or 4 pieces. Open black lens bracket 014501503 Fei Luo 182,561,521. What a terrible guy. Yamato's eyes became more solemn, and he said in a deep voice. That human's power is very strong, and is definitely not weaker than me after Bankai. Hearing Yamato's evaluation, Naya Wangyu and Hikifuna Kiryu were shocked again. Everyone knows that the Zero Division is the strongest division in the Seirei, but the reason for this title is the strength of King Hayasubi's bottom guard. Except for Ichibe Hayasubi, the rest of the members together are not enough to be chopped by old man Yamamoto. Although these two have never fought head-on, in the hearts of the Zero Division members, Yamato is stronger than old man Yamamoto. And Yamato Shang actually said that day and night were not weaker than him. That human, does he also have bad intentions towards the Soul King? Nimiwu Wangyu frowned. I don't know. Yamato Shang frowned. I don't know that human at all, and I don't know how to deal with his power. Hikifuna Kiryu was terrified. According to you, that human boy can invade the Soul King Palace at any time. Just when several people were in doubt, in the sky, 72 barriers emerged to counter the constantly distorted King's space. The figure of the boy in the distorted space can be vaguely seen. Zero Squad, right? Naya stared at Yamato Shang and the other two across the vast space, his eyes cold, and said lightly. I have no interest in the so-called Spirit King. Don't come to provoke me. If you insist on making trouble, I don't mind destroying this place. I'll give these two guys back to you. I'll let them learn a little lesson. As he said, the space across the 72 barriers twisted like Uzumaki, and 2 figures fell down with a thump. Senjumaru. Kirinji Tenshiro is dead. Hikifune Kiryu exclaimed, and hurriedly went up to help the 2 members of Zero Squad up. Are you okay? Hikifune Kiryu asked worriedly. It's not normal to say that I'm okay. Senjumaru smiled bitterly, touched his abdomen and said, I don't know what that boy did, my spiritual power was sealed up. Kirinji Tenshiro's face turned black, and he said, why is my spiritual power sealed to my back? The 3 people present took a deep breath. Chapter 152. The Shock to Squad Zero, The Invisible Empire. Chapter 152. The Shock Given to the Zero Division, The Invisible Empire. After learning the whole story, Yamato Shang, Naya Wangyue, and Hikifuna Kiryu, the expressions of the 3 became extremely solemn, as if they had encountered something difficult. You mean, that human boy easily defeated you and suppressed the captain after Bankai? Yamato Shang's voice was full of disbelief. Although he had never sparred with Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, both of them were top-level masters, and they had some assessment of each other's strength. Captain Yamamoto after Bankai, even he had to avoid his edge. After all, the high temperature of 15 million degrees was not a joke. The 4 moves after Bankai, East, West, South, and North, also had the power to destroy the world. In terms of attack power alone, Seirei, no, the whole world could not find a Shinigami stronger than Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Now, someone actually told him that someone suppressed Captain Yamamoto after Bankai. I also feel incredible. Kirinji Tenshiro smiled bitterly, recalling the war he had watched. He was still frightened. Those 2 people were simply monsters, and they almost blew up the entire jingling court when they started fighting. The captain had a fire that could burn the sky and the earth. But Kie was able to suppress the captain. Originally, he thought that with his combat power, even if he was not as good as the captain, he could at least suppress a human. Who would have thought that just one of that human's subordinates would beat him up? Then Kie attacked, and he and Shudoro Senjumaru were forcibly sealed into the meteorite without even having the chance to fight back. The 2 of them, together with those nobles, floated in space for a long time. If it weren't for the Shinigami captains who took action to dig them out of the increasingly large planet, they would probably be sealed in the starry sky. What should we do next? Several people present couldn't help but look at Yamato Shang. Yamato's mouth twitched. Soul Society, inside the Seirei. Are you done yet, old man? In the sky, Kie held the Tien Numa spear in his right hand, floating in the air with the help of gravity, and looked at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni impatiently. I said I won't fight anymore. Are you really going to turn Seirei into a mountain of fire? The old man Yamamoto's face turned black. Little ghost, I didn't lose, and you violated the rules and invaded the Soul King Palace. You must be punished. As he spoke, the old man Yamamoto strode forward, waving the soul-slaying sword, and slashed at Kie fiercely. Kie was a little helpless. It is said that you, the captain, have a calm personality, ADAG. But now it seems that you are no different from that idiot Zaraki Kenpachi. The old man Yamamoto snorted coldly, and the speed of swinging the sword did not change. Don't compare me with that idiot, an idiot who has learned to hold the sword with both hands for several months. What qualifications do you have to fight with me? 1,000 years ago, he was extremely aggressive. This can be seen from Ryūjin Jakka. Owning such a strongest flame-type soul-slaying sword shows that old man Yamamoto has a hot temper. It's just that because it is the strongest in 1,000 years, and considering the destructive power after Bankai. This is why he suppressed himself for 1,000 years and didn't make a move. Below. Zaraki Kenpachi's mouth twitched. He wanted to fight the 2 people above, but after thinking about it, he gave up this decision. There is no point in fighting these 2 monsters. If this goes on, several Shinigami will be burned to death. Toya glanced at Shizuki below. Under the high temperature of Ultimate, the clean and tidy Seirei buildings were burned red, as if they had turned into stones on charcoal fire. Many Shinigami couldn't even withstand the high temperature and fainted from the heat. There were also many places where spontaneous combustion occurred. Retracting his gaze, Kie curled his lips, grabbed the old man Yamamoto's shoulder, and said, "Come with me, I'll find a place to cool you down, aim no Michu." With a flash of his figure, Kie dragged Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni by force, crossed the space, and came to a cold world covered with ice and snow. There were snowflakes floating in the sky, ice and snow everywhere, and the ground under his feet was frozen soil that did not melt. Old man Yamamoto looked around in surprise. He had also experienced great storms and knew that there were many broken worlds, independent spaces, etc. outside the 3 worlds. But he had never seen such a terrible world of ice and snow. There were howling winds everywhere, and ice and snow that would not melt for 1,000 years. The most important thing was that the coldness of this world was accompanied by spiritual power, which was as deadly as the scorching heat of Ryūjin Jakka. Old man Yamamoto felt it carefully, and was more and more surprised. This degree of coldness is no weaker than Hitsugaya Dashiro's Bankai. It is definitely not formed naturally. You know, Hitsugaya Dashiro is very weak to him, but he is indeed the captain of the Jinglingting. In this weird space, every second is equivalent to Hitsugaya Dashiro's Bankai. The air is almost freezing. People. Welcome to my world. Kie in front stopped, turned his head to look at old man Yamamoto, and said with a smile, "This is the world I just created. If you are not too annoying, I really don't want to throw you in here." After summoning the sacred tree in Hueco Mundo, he used the spiritual power of the Jingping Sea Crystal. Kie tried to create several natural disaster worlds. They are ice, magma, thunder, tsunami, sandstorm. But so far, only the ice world has been created. With a thought, Yi's figure gradually merged with the space. The next second, the overwhelming snow and ice, carrying the overwhelming cold air, were like a pure white wave, overwhelmingly attacking old man Yamamoto. Under this cold air, even the prison uniform on old man Yamamoto began to shake. HMPH, old man Yamamoto snorted coldly and waved his soul-slaying sword. 20 minutes later, Naya opened the passage in Tenno no Mikoto again and walked out with the old man Yamamoto. 014501503 Falu 182,571,061. Seeing him coming out, the Shinigami present blinked and looked at the eye-catching bald head on Naya's shoulder. This is the captain. Hiss. The Shinigami around him kept gasping for air, and some even rubbed their eyes. Captain, the captain was defeated again. I don't know who shouted, and the atmosphere of the Seirei was instantly in an uproar. Wait, why do you say again? How could this be? Naya won the competition with the captain this time. Hasn't the captain already activated Bankai and used his Bankai ability? How could he lose to that human? Oh my god, this guy is now the king of Hueco Mundo. He defeated the captain. Who can subdue him next? The people present Shinigami's face was as ugly as the sky falling. They could accept the defeat of the captain. However, they could not accept that the captain was still defeated by humans after Bankai. Wow, Naya, did you really defeat the captain? Rukia Kuchiki came over and looked at Naya with an incredible face. Naya spread his hands and said innocently, who asked this old man to fight me in the wind and snow? Doesn't he think about whether he can beat me? The ice world created by Amano Miyaka is his home. Old man Yamamoto's move is equivalent to making an enemy of the world. First, the blizzard raged, then the temperature dropped, and then there was a 1,000-mile avalanche. Fortunately, the old man was not frozen into an ice sculpture. Chapter 153. The Invisible Empire is shocked, and the rebellious soul-slaying sword. Chapter 153. The shock of the Invisible Empire, the rebellious soul-slaying sword. The sky has fallen. The sky has really fallen. When seeing the fainted captain, the quiet Shinigami felt dizzy. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years was defeated. You know, this is not a victory like Aizen Sōsuke used tricks to seal the old man Yamamoto's Bankai. It was a head-on battle, and Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni was defeated head-on. Ordinary Shinigami were a little panicked. For them, the captain was the sky, and now, the sky has fallen. The strongest became the human Naya. What will happen next? Will the pattern of the three realms change because of this? Will Naya be the second Yubak? That's right, Naya is also the king of Hueco Mundo. Not to mention ordinary Shinigami, even the Shinigami captains were a little pale. 947. Kashimura Sajin, with a solemn look, his right hand was already on the soul-slaying sword, but looking at Naya's figure, he felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Even the captain was defeated. What's the point of him going up? In this depressing and weird atmosphere, Rukia Kuchiki hurried over, patted Naya on the back, and complained. Nana, you're too heavy-handed. Captain G is almost turned into a smurf by you. Is that so? Nana only realized belatedly that old man Yamamoto's skin was blue due to the cold, and even in a coma, he was shivering all over. You can't blame me for this. Naya spread his hands and said innocently, it was because this old man was too strong. He was frozen by the tsunami 7 or 8 times. His hands were frozen, so I knocked him down with one knife. Rukia Kuchiki couldn't help but grit her teeth and quickly asked the Shinigami of the 4th team to come and treat him. Then, she looked at Naya with a bad look and asked, during the time when I didn't go to Hueco Mundo, what happened between you and Miss Yoruichi? Naya was sweating all over. Rukia Kuchiki gritted her teeth and said with gritted teeth, I want to go too. Where to go? Kyoya Palace. Rukia Kuchiki glared at Naya fiercely. Many Shinigami who saw this scene looked at Rukia Kuchiki with admiration. It has to be you. Even the monster that can be defeated by the captain has to listen to your training. Ichimaru Jin saw this and said with a smile, Captain Kuchiki, in my opinion, it is better to let your sister be the captain. Byakuya Kuchiki looked over expressionlessly. Jashiro Yukitaki coughed and said, indeed, Rukia has now mastered Bankai and is indeed qualified to be the captain. Kashiwamura Sajin nodded and said in a deep voice, Rukia Kuchiki's strength is not bad. After Bankai, her strength is stronger than mine. Hitsugaya Tashiro's mouth twitched. He didn't want to talk. Because he felt that his position as the strongest ice-type soul-slaying sword was about to be taken away by Rukia Kuchiki. Muguruma Kensai said puzzledly, but now the captain's position is full, is she going to challenge a bigger captain? Many captains looked over silently. Muguruma Kensai. In the shadows, the invisible empire. In front of a water mirror, several Quincy's in white robes looked at the scene inside with serious eyes. It was the scene inside the jingling court. This guy is really scary. Bambietta Bastabayan looked at Kai's figure with fiery eyes. He is obviously a human, but he has such a terrible power. Interesting, I like him. Beside him, Ace Not looked at Kai's figure, his eyes flickered. Don't you think that this guy's power is similar to your majesty? The other members of the Invisible Empire fell silent. But think about it carefully, it is true. As a human, he has mastered extremely strange power, and can let others master the same literary calendar area. It is exactly the same as Yuabak. The only difference is that Kai's power is stronger than Yuabak. Kiluya Opi snorted coldly and said in a deep voice, so what, your majesty is the strongest. When your majesty opens his eyes, there will be no rivals in this world. Hearing this, the Quincy present nodded slowly, and felt a little more confident. When they watched the battle just now, they were very desperate in their hearts, because the opponent's power was too strong. Not only Naya, but also Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. It is hard to imagine who has the ability to subdue the high-temperature flames that burn the heaven and earth. I am afraid that only His Majesty and Hashwald can do it. But His Majesty has not fully awakened yet. When His Majesty opens his eyes, he will fight to gain the power of the two monsters beyond Wen. And next to these Quincy, Aizen Sōsuke, who is incompatible with them, smiled and said. The problem now is not Shinigami, but that human. Speaking of this, Aizen Sōsuke's eyes flickered and smiled. Don't you have your own ability to deal with Shinigami? The Quincy present frowned, but didn't say anything. After Yūabok brought Aizen Sōsuke to the Invisible Empire, many strong people were concerned about Aizen Sōsuke challenge him. He thought he was not qualified to wake up His Majesty early and save him at the cost of injury. But these Quincy were easily defeated without even a single move in Aizen Sōsuke's hands. They finally realized it. The guy who almost wiped out the Shinigami of the Seirei was a monster who could stand on equal footing with His Majesty, and even share the same power. Aizen Sōsuke glanced at the King of Quincy sitting on the throne in the hall, wearing a black robe and closing his eyes. With my help, Yūabok will wake up faster. At that time, the Shinigami must be dealt with first. But before that, I also have my own ideas. Time flies. Half a year has passed in the blink of an eye. Hueco Mundo, Hueco Mundo. On the Uranus throne, Naya held Nelul in his arms, looking at the towering 2.2 meters high tree, and couldn't help but sigh. This thing is finally going to mature. In the Hokage world, the tree will mature soon after it is created, but it's the opposite for her. Although she has the power beyond the 6 paths, she has not eaten the fruit of the tree. But it's good this way. Naya smiled. The slower it grows, the stronger the power in the fruit. Nelul looked at Naya in confusion, not understanding what he was saying, and buried her head in eating her konpedo. After a while, Ulquiorra walked in with a cold look and said, Your Majesty, Miss Yoruichi is here, but... Before she could finish her words, a strange black figure rushed in. Naya, it's bad, something big has happened. My soul-slaying sword is coming to find you. Chapter 154. The soul-severing sword is materialized, the Invisible Empire attacks. Chapter 154. The soul-slaying sword is materialized, the Invisible Empire is attacking. Abu. A black figure is attacking. Looking at the familiar face of the attacking figure, Kai's eyes flashed with a strange color, and he said. Ulquiorra, you retreat first. Yes. Ulquiorra nodded indifferently. After Ulquiorra left, Kie stretched out his right hand in surprise and said, Miss Yoruichi, when did you have a sister? Universal pull. The invisible gravity acted on the black shadow, and Xingxi also pulled it over. Meow. The black shadow made a struggling cat cry. But in the end, it failed to break free from the bondage of gravity and was forcibly imprisoned on Kai's knees. Looking at the catgirl struggling in his arms, Kie raised his right hand and gently patted her perky buttocks, which immediately stopped the latter's movement. Don't touch my soul-slaying sword. Shihuan Yoruichi ran over with a red face and quickly explained to Kie. I don't know what happened to O3, anyway, my soul-slaying sword has materialized and ran out. Chai suddenly realized, looked at the catgirl on his knees. She looks the same as Shihuan Yoruichi, the only difference is that she has cat ears, cat claws, and cat tail, which makes her look more lovely and attractive. Don't talk to me, you hateful woman. Catgirl Yoruichi looked at her master Shihuan Yoruichi viciously. Shihuan Yoruichi couldn't help but said, Wait, I'm your master, how can you be so rude to me? Catgirl Yoruichi looked at him and gritted her teeth and said, Shihuan Yoruichi, you still have the face to say, when have you ever borrowed my power? Do I disgust you so much that you don't want to use me even once? I hate you the most as a master. Hearing the complaints of her soul-slaying sword, Shihuan Yoruichi was immediately ashamed. Indeed. Because her white hits Shunpo and other abilities have far surpassed Zanpakuto, she has lost interest in Zanpakuto. For hundreds of years, she has hardly used the abilities of the soul-slaying sword. After complaining, catgirl Yoruichi licked her paws, wrapped her arms around Nanaya's neck, and said, Master, can you use your ability to make me appear in real life? Of course not. Before Naya could speak, Shihuan Yoruichi couldn't help it and looked at her soul-slaying sword with a red face. You are my soul-slaying sword, how can you betray your master? And why do you call Kie the master? It's too shameful. Catgirl Yoruichi looked at her dissatisfiedly. Shihuan Yoruichi, shut up, don't you often call me like that when you were in bed? Shihuan Yoruichi's face was as red as an apple, and he pounced on her with gritted teeth. But surprisingly, the speed of catgirl Yoruichi was not inferior to Shihuan Yoruichi. The two flashed in the palace like black light. Nelul was dumbfounded and couldn't help rubbing her eyes with her jade hands. There were still two Yoruichi fighting. So, she looked at Kie in confusion and asked, Kie, am I still not asleep? Kie couldn't help but smile and rubbed her hair. I seem to have understood what happened, it's not very important. Oh. Nilu nodded obediently. BB, Kie licked her lips and said. Universal pull. Both hands simultaneously released gravity and captured two Yoruichi at the same time. Meow, master, this is the catgirl Yoruichi. Kie, let me go. This is Shihuan Yoruichi. The latter looked at Kie with a red face, struggled and said. What are you doing, Kie? Let me go quickly, the situation is very serious, I feel that Soul Society is in trouble because of this. It doesn't matter, I don't feel any danger. Kie smiled faintly and carried the two women to the room. Rukia Kuchiki's eyes have the transcription seal he left. It will be triggered as long as there is danger. At present, it seems that there is no danger. After the Wushan clouds and rain, the two Yoruichi lay on Kai's chest. Shihuan Yoruichi gritted his teeth and looked at her, saying, "You hateful human kid, you didn't even let go of the soul-severing sword." Kie blinked his eyes when he heard it. "Miss Yoruichi, what are you talking about? Your soul-severing sword is you." Shihuan Yoruichi was immediately furious. Although this is indeed the truth, she always feels that something is wrong. "Master, can you create me?" Catgirl Yoruichi looked at Naya pitifully and imitated a cat, licking Nanaya's chest with her tongue. Shihuan Yoruichi was furious when she saw this scene. "No, what are you doing? Don't do this in front of me." Catgirl Yoruichi ignored her. "Yeah, let me try." Naya touched her chin, and was also very interested in this proposal. "Wait, Naya, are you serious?" Shihuan Yoruichi looked at Naya at a loss. She knew Naya had the power to create life. But if she created her soul-slaying sword in the form of a physical body, would there be something wrong? "Try it, anyway, you don't need the soul-slaying sword," Naya said, and put her right hand on the chest of Catgirl Yoruichi, and the yin and yang spiritual power burst out at the same time. Meow meow meow. In the voice of Catgirl Yoruichi, in the shocked eyes of Shihuan Yoruichi, a flawless catgirl with wheat-colored skin was created. Not the kind of artificial body, but a living being with real life, success. Naya looked at the catgirl in surprise. Yoruichi never thought that he actually created life. This is something that only the realm of God can do. From now on, Catgirl Yoruichi is no longer Shihuan Yoruichi's soul-slaying sword, but an independent life form. Tay. Shihuan Yoruichi looked at Catgirl Yoruichi with a headache, wondering how he should get along with her next. Just at this moment, her body was overwhelmed. "Wait, are you still coming?" A few hours later. Kie let go of the fainted beauty, put on his clothes, stepped forward, and entered the twisted space created by Kamui. Soul Society, Squad 13. As soon as Kie walked out of Kamui's space, he felt the biting cold coming towards him. He squinted his eyes and looked around. The betrayal of the soul-slaying sword, and the Invisible Empire? Chapter 155. The soul-slaying sword is materialized. Soda no Shirayuki. Chapter 155. The materialization of soul-severing sword, Soda no Shirayuki. Looking around, the Seirei has become a mess. There are strange, materialized soul-severing swords everywhere. These creatures, which should be the embodiment of the Shinigami's soul, now have cold eyes and confront their masters with swords. Some even unite to deal with the Shinigami. The Shinigami seem quite powerless, after all, their soul-severing swords know them best, and the opponent is open to dismantling the soul-severing sword. In addition, Naya also found the figure of the Quincy. It's really a mess. Naya shook his head, and then the corner of his mouth curled up a little. Yabak, no, this kind of thing should not be his handiwork, it should be Aizen Sōsuke. He didn't know much about Yabak, but Aizen Sōsuke is different. He is an extremely dangerous and smart guy. He must have instigated the Zanhun swords. Retracting his scattered thoughts, Naya looked at the two women holding knives not far away. Hey, Rukia, and Soda no Shirayuki. The two women standing in a distance were Rukia, DXC. A young woman wearing a white long fur-said kimono. She has ice blue eyes and long lavender hair. The back of her hair is tied up in a long bun and falls behind her shoulders. She has a light yellow-green belt around her waist and a big lavender bow tied behind her back. She looks like the incarnation of the goddess of ice. Hearing this, Soda no Shirayuki turned to look at Kie and said in a cold voice, "Don't call me Soda no Shirayuki, my name is Baishafa." After that, Soda no Shirayuki waved the blade, and the biting ice spread towards Kie, and the voice as cold as a cold pond came. "Kie, don't stop me, I want to kill this woman, she shouldn't know my name." Rukia Kuchiki gritted her teeth, holding the soul-slaying sword in her hand and said, "Aren't you my soul-slaying sword? Why betray me at this time? Who bewitched you?" "No one bewitched me, I have awakened." Soda no Shirayuki said, waving the blade in his hand. "You Shinigami, you are not qualified to continue to enslave our soul-slaying sword. From today on, our soul-slaying sword will be free. Dance, Soda no Shirayuki." While speaking, the materialized Soda no Shirayuki released the soul Zondao, and the cold air it emitted was far colder than when Rukia Kuchiki used it herself. DV. Rukia Kuchiki gritted her teeth. The materialized soul Zondao can still release the soul Zondao, but she, the owner of the soul Zondao, cannot Shikai again. Okay. Kie understood the situation, smiled and walked over to pat Soda no Shirayuki's shoulder, and said, "After all, Rukia is your master, there is no need to draw the sword against each other, at worst I can create you." Chai paused and looked at Soda no Shirayuki's small nose in surprise. "Soda no Shirayuki, what are you smelling?" The ice snow goddess Soda no Shiryuki smelled the scent on Naya carefully, raised her head, and looked at him with eyes as cold as ice. Nanayo-kun, can you explain why you smell not only like a woman, but also a cat? Rukia Kuchiki was stunned for a moment, then gritted her teeth and looked at Yi. Is it Miss Yoruichi? Are both of you dog noses? Nanaya's mouth twitched, and she said helplessly, you misunderstood, it was Miss Yoruichi's soul-slaying sword that betrayed her, and she came to find my help. Did you help her in bed? Rukia Kuchiki gritted her teeth. Although she had long known that her man was very powerful and was now the king of Hueco Mundo. But it was a bit too fickle. Soda no Shiryuki was more decisive, holding the soul-slaying sword and speaking calmly. Then cut off his legs, don't let him run around. Bankai. Baishia penalty. After the words fell, Soda no Shiryuki entered the Bankai posture, and the cold air bursting out became colder, and the ground under his feet turned into ice crystals. No way. Kai's mouth twitched, and he was determined to cut the guy who betrayed the soul-slaying sword into pieces. Originally, he only needed to deal with one Rukia. Now there is another Soda no Shiryuki. Spitting out a breath, Kie looked at Soda no Shiryuki and said in a deep voice. 9 Magatama Samsara Sharingan. Instantly, Soda no Shiryuki's expression was dazed, and when he came to his senses, the bewitched consciousness had been lifted by Kie. Sure enough, is it the demon sword Muramasa? Kie was thoughtful. He vaguely remembered that there was such a strange Zanpakuto among the Shinigami. Its owner was sealed, but it could bewitch other Zanpakuto. Because of this sword, in order to save the sealed owner, Kwandong chose to cooperate with Aizen Sōsuke. As a result, all the Zanpakuto of the Shinigami in the entire Seireii went berserk. Not only did they all materialize, but they were also full of malice towards the Shinigami. The terrible thing is that it was not just ordinary Shinigami who were bewitched by the Zanpakuto, but even the captains of each division were bewitched. Even Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, more than a dozen Zanpakutos with Bankai. There is also a Ryūjin Jakka that can Bankai. See. Kie took a breath of cold air and couldn't help saying, this force is a little bit big. Just as Kie was thinking, he suddenly felt a flash of cold light in front of his eyes. Step back to avoid the cold light. Only then did he realize that the person swinging the knife was Soda no Shiryuki, and her expression was still as cold as the goddess of ice. Soda no Shiryuki, haven't you gotten rid of your bewitching spell yet? Kie looked at Soda no Shiryuki with a little surprise. Logically speaking, there should be no one in the world who is better at illusion than himself. Soda no Shiryuki said coldly, I was indeed affected in part, but this is not the reason for me to attack you. After that, Soda no Shiryuki attacked with Baishiafa in his hand, his voice as cold as ice and snow. As my man, you can't be so fickle. The main thing is. Soda no Shiryuki slashed at Kai's arm with a knife, using the cold air to freeze Kai's body. You can't come to see me without taking a shower. It seems that you are a misophobe, no wonder you look like an ice goddess. Kie complained in his heart, and broke free from the ice and snow with a little effort. Looking at Soda no Shiryuki who was constantly attacking, he suddenly had a headache. According to the experience in the original book, if the materialized soul-slaying sword is killed, then its owner will never be able to use it again. Shikai and the correct answer. Only when the soul-slaying sword that was killed by the master himself is materialized, can it return to the blade. I don't know if it will affect the use of the sword if it is broken. After all, this is a self-destructing soul-slaying sword. You can't fight it head-on. Kie sighed, looking at the Soda no Shiryuki in front of him and said, you are really a troublesome soul-slaying sword. After that, Kie exhaled, grabbed Soda no Shiryuki with his left hand, grabbed Rukia Kuchiki with his right hand, and said, Aim no Michu. The three of them entered the ice and snow world together. Chapter 156. Kaden Kyokotsu and the Materialization of Sogyo no Kotori. Chapter 156. The Materialization of Kaden Kyokotsu and Sogyo no Kotori. In a pure white world of ice and snow, Rukia Kuchiki hugged her clothes and looked at Naya with a red face, not knowing whether she should be angry or shy. My soul-slaying sword, Soda no Shiryuki, is not the same person as me after all. Looking at Soda no Shiryuki beside Naya, Rukia Kuchiki couldn't help muttering. The soul of the soul-slaying sword is the embodiment of the Shinigami soul. The two are one, but to some extent, they're independent. So she didn't know what her mood was now. Soda no Shiryuki hugged her clothes, her expression was still like an ice goddess, and she said lightly, Rukia, it doesn't matter, we are one, your man is my man. Hearing this, Rukia Kuchiki was angry and annoyed, and simply turned around and bit Kai's shoulder. It hurts. Kie felt pain and couldn't help rubbing Rukia Kuchiki's hair, saying, This can't be blamed on me, who made you Shinigami so troublesome, one person can have two souls. He thought of the white in Kurosaki Ichigo's body, which is obviously the soul of the soul-slaying sword, but it has a higher popularity than the original owner. If that guy is materialized, his strength may be stronger than Kurosaki Ichigo. Humph. Rukia Kuchiki snorted, reluctantly forgave Kie, and thought of the situation in the Seireii 273, and hurriedly said. Shy, everyone is in danger now. Not only did the soul-slaying sword betray its master, but there are also many Quincy masters who come out to make trouble. Well. Naya stretched, and said with a slight smile. I don't care, instead of caring about these, it's better to let those guys from the Zero Division come out. The betrayed soul-slashing swords add up to the power of almost 1,000 Seirei. In addition to Yuwatch and Aizen Sōsuke, he doesn't want to confront such a huge force head-on. Axe 1 yen. Rukia Kuchiki was a little anxious. Let's go and take a look first. Naya stood up, the Sharingan fluctuated, and put his hands on the shoulders of the two women. Wait, I'll put on my clothes first. Rukia Kuchiki's face flushed immediately, and she quickly stopped Naya's actions, and hurriedly put on her clothes. Soda no Shirayuki's actions were much faster, space fluctuated. The three returned to Seirei. Violent roars came one after another. The towering black rope Heavenly Punishment King, with red eyes and holding a black iron sword, launched a frantic and disorderly attack on the surroundings. Wherever the blade attacked, the ancient buildings were destroyed into ruins. There were two women beside him, laughing wildly and waving their swords wantonly. What the hell? Call Kyoraku Shunsui over here, I don't want to fight this crap. He's a man, but the soul-slaying sword is a woman, it's ridiculous, get him out, I'm going to kill him. While speaking, the tall-figured sister sword soul, standing higher than Kira slashed with excitement. Brand Ghost. I won. Kaden Kyokotsu Shikai's ability, when the party in a higher position attacks the party below him, it will cause great damage to the opponent. So when Kaden slashed with this sword, Kira, the vice-captain, was slashed and flew out. Many walls were smashed by Kira. In the distance, Hinamori Momo's face turned pale, and he nervously pointed his right hand at Kaden. The mad bone in Kyokotsu shouted loudly. Oh lord! The mask of flesh and blood, the myriad things, flapping their wings, the things named after humans. Scorching heat and chaos, rolling back across the sea to the south, march forward. Hado's 31 red cannons. The dazzling flames gathered into a sphere, bursting out from the palm of his hand, and rushed straight to the little loli like Kwang Ji-yu. In response, Kwang Ji-yu just glanced at it and said, Sogyo no Kotori, leave it to you, leave it to Sogyo no Kotori. Two cute children appeared in front of Kwang Ji-yu. Wearing tall hats and blue clothes similar to cloaks, the two of them held a piece of origami together, holding their hands together. The one on the left aimed his hand, a dab, at the oncoming fireball and swallowed the fireball in just a moment. The one on the right aimed his right hand at Hinamori Momo. Bounce. The red fire cannon swallowed by the Sogyo no Kotori on the left was directly shot out by the Sogyo no Kotori on the right. What? Hinamori Momo's pupils dilated, looking at the oncoming red fire cannon in horror, subconsciously blocking the soul-slaying sword in front of her chest. But her soul-slaying sword didn't even have Shikai, so how could it block the red fire cannon? At the critical moment, Kie raised his eyebrows and said, Heavenly Power Hand. Instantly, Hinamori Momo's figure was switched with Kai's. Facing the oncoming red fire cannon, Kie just flicked his finger and fired. Bang! The bright fireball was exploded. Seeing this scene, the 5 captain-level materialized soul-slaying swords present all changed their faces, with fear in their eyes. It's this human, he's very powerful. Kaden Kyokotsu, Hanako, turned his head and looked at the towering Kuroko Tensai Myoko, and said, Kuroko Tensai Myoko, hurry up and hold him back, we have to wait until Ryūjin Jakka materializes, only he can deal with this guy. Kuroko Tensai Myoko nodded and looked at Naya, his voice came like thunder. Human. You defeated Kashiwamura Sajin twice, but I'm not that waste, I can exert my strength 100%. As he said, Kuroko Tensai Myoko swung the big sword that covered the sky, cut through the air, and slashed down fiercely at Naya Yoruichi. More than twice. Naya smiled, facing the huge blade coming towards him, and met it with one hand. Snap. The thin flesh palm actually blocked the black iron blade. Seeing this scene, Shinigami and the materialized Zanhun sword were both a little absent-minded. Because the scene was indeed very shocking. A young man of about 1.8 meters tall actually stopped the 80-meter black iron sword with one hand. It was like a mantis blocking a truck with the handle of the sword. The impact of the scene hit the heart directly. Too weak. Kie shook his head, exerted a little force with his right hand, and said, There is a fundamental gap between you and my Ryatsu now. Kaka. The black iron sword held by Kai's right hand actually had cracks extending from the fingers. Ah! The black rope Heavenly Punishment King could not help but scream. As a physical soul-slashing sword, every blow meant that his body was also seriously injured. When Hua Tian and Kwang Ji-yu saw this scene, their faces suddenly changed. Knowing that they could not wait for Ryūjin Jakka's support, they rushed forward with nervous eyes. Kwang Ji-yu held the short sword in her hand and said in a deep voice. Shadow Ghost. As soon as the voice fell, her body actually merged into the shadows of the surrounding buildings, and appeared in Kai's shadow while swimming. Aim the short sword at Kai's heart. Chapter 157. The Reverse Evil 8 Treasures and Kaden Kyokotsu Black Pine Heart. Chapter 157. The Reverse Evil 8 Treasures and Kaden Kyokotsu Heisong Shin. Kaden Kyokotsu, an extremely dangerous soul-slaying sword. Turning children's games into reality. As long as you step into Kaden Kyokotsu's Ryatsu range, you will be forced to participate in the game. All the rules are set by Kaden Kyokotsu. If you win, you can survive, and if you lose, you must die. Even his master Shunsui is the same. And when Kaden Kyokotsu chose to attack Naya, Naya had been pulled into the game and became a part of the game. With turquoise eyes, violet hair, and a skull on his head, he looks like a shamat girl. With a cold expression, he walked out of the shadow and stepped on Naya's shadow. At the same time, the short sword in the hand of the plaque stabbed downwards. Abu. The short sword stabbed the shadow and went deep into the ground. At this moment, Kie raised his eyebrows slightly, looked down at his chest, and found a faint scar. The scar was not deep, but there was a trace of blood. Is it really a dangerous soul-slashing sword that causes double damage to its own units? Kie couldn't help laughing. He had understood Kaden Kyokotsu's Shikai ability. That is, in the game, the person who wins first will have a greatly increased lethality in the next level, almost 10 times the original. It can be said to be an extremely unreasonable rule. If you are not strong enough, or if you don't understand the rules of the game in the first place, you will never be able to defeat Kaden Kyokotsu. And seeing that Kwang Ji-yu hit the enemy with one blow, he was stunned and stared blankly at Kai's chest, which was not as deep as a fingernail. How is it possible? I clearly hit you with my shadow. Didn't I say it? The gap is too big? Kie stretched out his free left hand to her. With the gap between our Ryatsu, you can hurt me, which is enough to be proud of, not good. Hanaten's face suddenly changed, and he took a long step and rushed towards Kie quickly. When he was close, he jumped up and slashed down from a high position. Sexy ghost, black. He aimed the knife at Kai's clothes. This is also the game of Kaden Kyokotsu. One of you or the enemy says the name of a color, and both sides can only cut the area of the other side covered with that color. If you cut the area of other colors, the cut will be invalid. The larger the area of the called color on the collar, the stronger the power of the collar's cut. And Kie was wearing a black short-sleeved shirt today. Kie raised her eyebrows and looked at the clothes on Hanaten. It was a long and deep dress with a low neckline, revealing her plump breasts that were about to burst out in a very deep ravine. The colors are divided into black, dark red, and purple. So suddenly, Kie changed his target, aimed his left hand at her abdomen, suppressed some of his spiritual power, and said, Shinra Tensai. The long-lost repulsive force burst out. The speed was much faster than Huaishin's blade, and it hit the black part of her clothes on her abdomen first. It was obviously an attack with suppressed spiritual power, but at this moment, it burst out with extremely strong lethality. Huaishin's face changed drastically, and his body flew backwards uncontrollably, smashing a lot of walls with a rumble, and fell into the ruins. Just when he wanted to stand up and say something, he suddenly spit out a large mouthful of blood. Hanaten looked at Naya solemnly. Although he had known Naya's horror from Kyoraku Shunsui, but only by experiencing it can one feel the despair. The young man in front of him, who had a calm expression, had blocked the black rope heavenly punishment Mingwang with one hand. But even in this situation, he could still attack with his right hand and even defeat Kaden Kyokotsu, who had already Shikai. Sobyo no Kotori, can't you do anything? Kwang Ji-yu looked at the blue twins Sobyo no Kotori anxiously. The cute blue twins shook their heads and said, his abilities are all materialized attacks, and I have no way to absorb them. Damn it. Hana and Kwanggu gritted their teeth at the same time. Knowing that they didn't have much time, they shouted at the same time, Bankai, Kaden Kyokotsu Black Pine Heart. Behind them, black pine trees spread out like shadows, and at the same time exuded a terrifying Ryatsu. After doing all this, Hana and Kwanggu rushed towards Naya at the same time, shouting loudly, each enemy hesitation trauma sharing. At this moment, Naya felt a little pain in his abdomen, as if he had just been hit in the abdomen by Shinra Tensai. The ability is really weird. Naya muttered to himself, thinking of the ability after Kaden Kyokotsu Bankai. 0. Seeking flowers, compared with Shikai's. Turning children's games into reality. Bankai can be said to be the realization of adult drama. The ability is, the tragedy that happened in the past reappears on the enemy again. And Kaden like Shikai of Kyokotsu, as long as you step into the Ryatsu range of Kaden Kyokotsu Black Pine Heart, you will be forced to participate in the game. That is to say, with this move just now, she transferred all the injuries she suffered to me. Kie thought in his heart, and continued to use his right hand to spread the blade of the black rope heavenly punishment Mingwang with dense cracks. It seemed that it would be completely broken in the next second. While dealing with Kaden Kyokotsu's attack, Shi Yoriichi raised his head. Kyoraku Shunsui, you old drunkard, if you don't come to help, I will kill your soul-slaying sword. He wanted to remove the bewitching power of these materialized soul-slaying swords. But the problem is that these materialized soul-slaying swords seem to have some kind of connection, and they all know what happened to Soda no Shirayuki. Even in the battle, they don't look at their own eyes. In the distance, Kyoraku Shunsui's voice came. Wait, Nanaia-kun, calm down, Wait for me for another 3 minutes, no, wait for me for another 10 minutes, don't chop my sword into pieces. What the hell is this guy doing? Nanae was full of black lines, and simply received a seal with one hand while dealing with the attacks of the two women. Rain Tiger Freedom Technique. It rained lightly throughout Soul Society, and all the figures soaked by the rainflow came into Nanaya's sight. The materialized soul-slaying swords, the Shinigami of each division, the Quincy, the Arankar Manos Grande. Soon, the figures of Kyoraku Shunsui and several others were found. There were him, Jashiro Yukitaki, Hirako Shinji, Muguruma Kensai, Atoribashi Rojiro, Sarugaki Hiyori, and many other Shinigami. Opposite them was a yellow figure hanging upside down in the air. Hirako Shinji, sweating profusely, looked at the yellow figure opposite, waved his hands, and said in a very sincere voice. Nifu, calm down, you are my soul-slaying sword, you will definitely not be bewitched by Aizen and Muramasa, right? Faced with Hirako Shinji's comfort, the yellow figure hanging upside down in the air, like a reflection in a mirror, said indifferently. Bankai. Neon Shei Babao Saiji. Chapter 158. The Nine White-Tailed Beasts. Bankai taken away by the Star Chapter. Chapter 158. The Nine White-Tailed Beasts. The Bankai taken away by the Star. Bankai. It's actually Bankai. Seeing the upside-down yellow figure on the opposite side using Bankai, Shinigami such as Kyoraku Shunsui all changed their faces. Because their soul-slaying swords were bewitched and betrayed, most of them could not use Bankai, and could only use Shikai with difficulty. But the difference between Shikai and Bankai is huge. Hey, Hirako Shinji, what is the ability of your soul-slaying sword? Hitsugaya Toshiro turned his head and looked at Hirako Shinji. The ability of the soul-slaying sword is the strongest and most secretive means of the Shinigami, and it is usually not known to outsiders. For example, Kyoraku Shunsui, Jashiro Yukitaki, and Urahara Kazuki all hide their soul-slaying sword abilities. Hearing this, Hirako Shinji was sweating profusely and hurriedly said, calm down from now on, don't attack even if you see the enemy. 650, huh? The Shinigami present were all stunned. Hirako Shinji continued, when my soul-slaying sword is stroked in reverse, the blade of the Shikai will emit a fragrance. After the enemy smells it, the 10 perceptions of up and down, left and right, front and back will be reversed. And Bankai. Hirako Shinji swallowed his saliva and said in an extremely dry voice. The ability is to reverse everything. In short, except for yourself, regardless of enemy or friend. Reverse the perception of enemy and companion of everyone in the range, so that they kill each other, group. The simple introduction of the ability made Hirako Shinji say it very hard. Because he knew the terribleness of his ability, especially when there were many people, this ability could be said to be the strongest weapon of destruction. After hearing Hirako Shinji's introduction, the Shinigami present seemed to have 100,000 alpaca horses galloping through their hearts. How could there be such an outrageous soul-slaying sword? As everyone was shocked, brass petals appeared under the feet of the yellow figure, gradually closing to form a brass bud. In such a moment, the Shinigami present all changed their faces because in their senses, there were enemies everywhere. They were almost instinctively going to kill the enemy. But at the critical moment, they still thought of Hirako Shinji's words and forcibly suppressed this instinct. It was Hirako Shinji, after all, the owner of Nifu, who gritted his teeth and rushed towards the concrete Nifu with the soul-slaying sword. At this stage, the Shinigami present gradually retreated to a distance, fearing that a real enemy would come. It was at this time. In the distance of many Shinigami, several Quincy in white robes appeared, with indifferent expressions, bending their bows and aiming arrows at the Shinigami. Due to the distance, the ability of the Evil Eight treasures did not affect them. With a soldier-like temperament, Kiru Jopi raised a cruel smile and waved his sword, saying, kill them. Instantly, blue arrows shot out like a rainstorm. When the Shinigami captains such as Kyoraku Shunsui realized that they were attacked by the arrows of the Quincy, their faces suddenly changed and they subconsciously counterattacked. However, due to the existence of the Evil Eight treasures, their attacks were completely self-destructive. Kyoraku Shunsui attacked Jashiro Yukitaki. Muguruma Kensai attacked Atoribashi Rojiro. Hitsugaya Toshiro attacked Sarugaki Hiyori. The scene suddenly became a mess, and the weaker Shinigami were injured on the spot. Jiruji-O looked at the embarrassed Shinigami with dissatisfaction, and couldn't help laughing, saying, I didn't expect that Aizen is still very capable, and he could actually think of this. Let the Shinigami and his own soul-slaying sword kill each other, fight against himself, and be hit by the power of his own soul-slaying sword. Your Majesty is indeed your Majesty. With the help of Aizen, Soul Society will definitely be destroyed. I really can't stand it. After noticing the situation over there, Kie frowned, pointed his left hand at the violent embodiment of Nifu, and said, don't blame me if the soul-slaying sword breaks. 9 Tails. In an instant, Kai's palm turned pure white, squirmed, and turned into 9 Tails Kurama, extending infinitely. Keel Jopi, who thought he had won, saw the roaring 9 Tails, his face changed, and he said in doubt, what kind of monster is this? Stop him quickly. The Quincy behind him quickly aimed his bow and arrow at the white 9 Tails. Thousands of arrows shot over. But compared to the huge size of Nine Tails, arrows of this magnitude did not hurt at all. As a last resort, Kyōka chose to attack himself with a blue blade in his right hand, and pointed the end of the blade at Nine Tails. Monster, lock it up. The holy word unique to the new Cross Knights, given by Yubak himself, was activated. And his holy word happened to be prison. From the tip of his sword, a solid spirit particle cage was shot out, in a round shape, sealing the roaring Nine Tails demon fox. And using spirit particles to form a strip seal, did it succeed? Kyōka looked at the white Nine Tails demon fox a little nervously. He knew that this was an attack released by Naya. For Naya, both Aizen Sōsuke and Yubak gave the highest level of special combat power. Noticing that Nine Tails was trapped, Naya, who was far away, showed a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Do you think you are Namikaze Minato? With a thought, the nine-tailed beasts in Naya's body turned into white liquid at the same time and exploded in the body of Nine Tails in the distance. 1 tail, 2 tails, 3 tails, 4 tails, 5 tails, 6 tails, 7 tails, 8 tails. 8 ferocious white-tailed beasts rushed out of the white Nine Tails at the same time and hit the blue prison heavily. The blue prison sphere shattered with a bang. The nine-tailed beasts roared and bit the evil 8 treasures who was fighting with Hiriko Shinji. The latter's body was immediately covered with blood. Hiriko Shinji was so distressed when he saw it, but he also knew that it was not the time to care about this. Taking advantage of the opportunity provided by the 9 white-tailed beasts, Hiriko Shinji held the soul-slashing sword and stabbed the body of the materialized Nifu. The latter's body immediately merged into Hiriko Shinji's soul-slashing sword. The Shinigami who were killing each other stopped. Looking at their injured companions, Hiriko Shinji and others looked at the Quincy with anger. Damn you, I will never let you go. Hiriko Shinji's eyes flashed with anger, and he rushed over quickly with a knife. When he approached Kyōka, he shouted loudly without hesitation. Bankai Nifu Hachibose. The newly returned Bankai activated and was about to reverse all the Quincy's perception of enemies and companions on the scene. At this moment, Ryūjin sneered and pointed the star in his hand at Hiriko Shinji. Idiot, I've been waiting for your move. Dissolve. The sea turns to clouds, the clouds turn to rain. The rain turns to mist, the visible turns to invisible, and we are waiting for the end of joy, and the wine glass falls to the ground. Come on. In the shocked eyes of all Shinigami, Hiriko Shinji's Ryatsu after Bankai actually showed a blue spirit being pulled over. The Bankai posture was beaten back. Chapter 159. Desperate Shinigami, the savior who came from the sky. Chapter 159 Desperate Shinigami, the savior who came from the sky. F8. Hiriko Shinji stared at the soul-slaying sword in his hand in a daze. The Ryatsu that had soared after the Bankai gradually fell back, and the soul-slaying sword also returned to the Shikai posture. What's going on? Hiriko Shinji came to his senses, muttered to himself, and tried to launch the Bankai Neong Shie Babao seal again. However, he was horrified to find that his Bankai disappeared. It was as if there had never been Neong Shie Babao seal. It was you. Hiriko Shinji looked at Ryūjin, saw the star in his hand, and said with an extremely ugly face. It was that thing that took away my Bankai. At this moment, all the Shinigami present felt suffocated and had a sense of being pinched by the throat. They were even more desperate to figure out the key. Now, their soul-slaying sword was materialized by some kind of power and betrayed them, and they had to kill it with their own hands to take back the soul-slaying sword. However, after taking back the soul-slaying blade, using the unlocked one will not be taken away by the Quincy. It can be said that there are wolves in front and tigers behind. How can we fight this? Do you understand, Shinigami? Ryūjin sneered and raised the star seal. Without Bankai, you guys are a bunch of trash. While O3 was speaking, he silently gave Aizen Sōsuke a thumbs up. If it weren't for this Shinigami who had transformed Manos Grande, he really couldn't take away Hiriko Shinji's Bankai. Because the star seal can only take away Shinigami's Bankai, and Hiriko Shinji and other masked soldiers have mixed power of Hollow in their bodies. But now, even if Shinigami is mixed with the power of Hollow, the star seal will still take away their Bankai. It can be said that the power of the Quincy has been greatly enhanced. Damn it. Kyoraku Shunsui could no longer keep calm, stretched out his right hand to him with a livid face, and shouted in a deep voice. Beast bones scattered everywhere, spires, red crystals, steel wheels. The moving ones are the wind, and the still ones are the sky. The sound of the long spears hitting each other resounded throughout the hollow city. Hado number 63 Fiery Lightning Hell. The dazzling lightning burst out from his hand, crossing the sky like a laser. Seeing this, the other Shinigami also reacted. Without Bankai, they could only use Shikai and Kido of the soul-slaying sword. So they cast Hado without hesitation. Multiple Hados were activated, dazzlingly shooting at the Quincy. Hado number 78. Slashing Flower Wheel. Hado number 54. Wasting Flame. Hado number 57. Dance of the Earth. Facing the oncoming Hado, Ryūjin sneered. Idiot, let me show you the power of the Quincy, and then. Despair under my power. God's justice. The moment the voice fell, Jiru gathered his spiritual power on the gloves with the Quincy emblem attached, forming a psychic light cone with a circle at the top and a short cross overlapping. A halo of the Quincy mark appeared on his head. The irises of both eyes turned into multiple circles, covering the posture of the non-glass, shoulder straps, wrist guards and short boots composed of spiritual power. After entering this posture, Jiru aimed the tip of the knife at many Shinigami. Instantly, multiple arrows formed around him and shot out. A deafening explosion sounded. But Shinigami's Kido was obviously better, and all kinds of violent attacks killed Kyōka. What? Kyōka's pupils dilated, and he never thought that even if Shinigami didn't have the soul-slaying sword, his strength was still so strong. Just when many Shinigami showed excited expressions. Next to Kyōka, a young man wearing a light blue robe and a white X pattern on his face appeared. He looked like a nobleman. The young man raised the soul-slaying sword and said lightly, "Vacuum multi-layer ice wall." The power of controlling the celestial phenomena was activated, and the water molecules in the air quickly condensed to form multiple layers of pure white cold ice walls. With its strong defense, it withstood the Kido used by Shinigami. The moment Hitsugaya Toshiro saw the young man, his pupils shrank and he lost his voice. That is, my Hiranmaru. The power of controlling the celestial phenomena can freeze water molecules into ice. There is no doubt that this is the embodiment of the strongest ice-type soul-slaying sword Hiranmaru. The Shinigami present were shocked and felt frustrated. No one knew the horror of their soul-slashing swords better than them. And now, their soul-slashing swords and the Quincy have joined forces. Then, the Stern Cross Knights, BG Niken as a robot and Ace Knot with a black mask came over. Ace Knot glanced at Kyōka and said lightly, "Don't be careless. After all, this is the enemy that defeated us 1,000 years ago. It is not easy to deal with it." Kyōka's face was a little ugly, but he nodded silently. "I know, is." The heart of the Shinigami on the opposite side sank to the bottom. The concrete soul-slaying sword and these Quincy's joined forces, which is equivalent to the combination of the spirit court and the invisible state. How should this be fought? Your Majesty and Aizen went to deal with Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. We stay here and at least kill 1 or 2 captains first. BG9's voice was like a machine, unusually cold. After the voice fell, countless tubes spread out from his right hand, connecting and twisting to form the shape of a Gatling gun. Aim the Gatling gun at the opposite side Shinigami. The next second, countless spiritual bullets poured out. At the same time, Hiranmaru, Kyōka, and Ace Knot chose to attack at the same time. More Stern Cross Knights appeared in the distance. Dazzling blue arrows attacked, overwhelming. Kyōka did not leave room for the Shinigami present to dodge. 17. The Shinigami present changed their faces and quickly used Bakudo's defensive ability to resist. Continuous explosions continued to sound. Among them, Sui Feng's eyes were cold, and he stared directly at Baiji 9 among the Quincy. He stepped forward and rushed out directly. At least one must be solved first. Sting and kill all enemies, Suzumaki. Although he could not use the soul-severing sword's Bankai, Sui Feng still found his soul-severing sword's Shikai with his many years of experience. Suzumaki, like a stitch from the queen, appeared on the middle finger of his right hand. However, before he could wait, Sui Feng took another step forward, and Hiranmaru, who was as cold as a nobleman, raised the soul-slaying sword in his hand and said lightly, "Bankai Dagoran Hiranmaru." The moment the voice fell, snowflakes fell from the sky, containing extremely cold air, and fell on the bodies of Shinigami 570 present. Hitsugaya Toshiro's face changed drastically, knowing the horror of this move, and quickly shouted loudly, "Captain Sui Feng, be careful, don't let the snowflakes fall on you. If there are more than 100 snowflakes on your body will be directly frozen by frost." What? Sui Feng's pupils shrank. Just at this moment, Hiranmaru looked at Sui Feng indifferently and said, 014501503 Filu 182,581,431, Ice Sky 100 Flowers Burial. Although there were less than 100 snowflakes on Sui Feng's body, he still burst out with ultimate coldness, blooming white ice flowers. Baiji 9 showed a cruel look and aimed the Gatling gun in his hand at Sui Feng. "Go to hell, woman." Looking at the black gun barrel, Sui Feng, who was imprisoned by the ice flowers, showed despair. The hearts of the Shinigami also froze. The situation was too bad. The soul-slaying knife was betrayed by them. It can even be used Bankai's terrible power. The Invisible Empire's Quincy is also very strong, and they have joined forces with their soul-slaying swords. Just as the Gatling gun fired bullets at the critical moment, the whole sky suddenly turned dark. Everyone subconsciously looked up, and their pupils suddenly dilated, watching the giant black robe Heavenly Punishment King smashing over. Boom boom. The deafening roar resounded through the sky. This is. Sui Feng in the Frostflower stared at the black robe Heavenly Punishment King in a daze. The next second, from the back of the black robe Heavenly Punishment King, Kie walked out. He sat on the black armor, looked at Sui Feng opposite and said with a smile, "Sui Feng, you are too careless." Chapter 160. The Star-Crossed Knights who were killed instantly. Chapter 160. The Stern-Crossed Knights who were killed instantly. Kie, you are here. Seeing Kie, Sui Feng couldn't help showing a surprised expression in his eyes. The Shinigami present were also ecstatic. With the Shinigami's power being weakened, Kai's support is particularly important. After all, Kie doesn't have his own soul-slaying sword, but his strength is extremely strong, and he can completely change the one-sided situation of the Shinigami parents. It's the one who defeated Aizen Sōsuke and injured his majesty. The faces of the Quincy present change. Before, they thought that their only enemy was the Shinigami, and for this reason, they spent 1,000 years to create the Star Seal. Who would have thought that the sudden human Kie would kill their king of Quincy? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Kie patted the black rope heavenly punishment Mingwang under his feet and smiled. It's a bit troublesome to deal with those soul-slaying swords, but I shouldn't be too late, right? Of course. Sui Feng smiled and breathed a sigh of relief, looking at the ice flower that froze him. That. Kie thought about it, stretched out his hand, and a white and red fan appeared in his hand, aiming at the imprisonment. Sui Feng fanned the pure white ice flower. The wind was blowing hard. A raging fire suddenly ignited in the cold wind. The fire stopped the wind, and the rolling flames swept across the sky, instantly melting the falling snowflakes and hitting the icicles in the sky. The frost on Sui Feng's body gradually melted. The falling snowflakes also dispersed, and even evaporated the water molecules in the sky. Abu! Sui Feng's figure flashed and appeared beside Kie, looking at the fan in his hand with doubt. Kie, your fan is. She was afraid that Kie would say it was the soul-slashing sword. Because with Kai's strength, if the concrete soul-slashing sword betrayed, it would be a disaster for Soul Society, no, for the whole world. This? Kie waved the fan in his hand and smiled. Don't worry, this is not the soul-slashing sword, it is a divine weapon I created. When he became a being above the 6 paths, he could already take the initiative to create things. For example, the ninjutsu given to Manos Grande. For example, a divine weapon different from the soul-slaying sword, etc. After hearing what Naya said, Sui Feng was relieved. It turned out to be a divine weapon. She knew the concept of divine weapons, such as the Sokyoku platform in the Mao execution ground, which was a divine weapon with the power of 1,000,000 soul-slaying swords. Not far away, looking at the two people sitting on the black rope heavenly punishment Mingwang happily, Kashiwamura Sajin finally couldn't help it and asked. That, my heavenly path. You mean this guy? Naya turned to look at Kashiwamura Sajin, patted the big guy under his butt, and couldn't help laughing. Sorry, the situation just now was a bit critical, so I just threw him over. Kashimura Sajin's mouth twitched slightly. The Black Rope Heaven Punishment King is the largest and heaviest soul-slaying sword recognized by the entire Seirei. You just threw it over so lightly. At this point, Kie said awkwardly. There is one more thing. I accidentally used too much force just now and broke your sword. You shouldn't mind, right? Hearing this, Kashimura Sajin's eyes almost popped out, and he quickly turned his head and looked at his Black Rope Heaven Punishment King. Sure enough, the sword in the Black Rope Heaven Punishment King's hand was already covered with spider web-like cracks. There was also a gap on the blade. It looked like it was crushed by the palm of the hand. Shinigami present. Day after Bankai, the most destructive sword can be crushed with the palm of your hand. You are worthy of being called the Elder. Seeing that the atmosphere here was good, the faces of several Quincy and members of the Stern-Crossed Knights in the distance gradually turned livid. Damn guy, dare to ignore us. Kyōka eyes flashed with anger, and he rushed towards Kie without hesitation. I am not that waste Aizen, let me avenge his majesty. Seeing Kyōka's actions, the eyes of several other Quincy flickered, but they did not stop his actions. Let me see, your power. Ace not looked at Kie coldly. The power that injured his majesty, did you succeed by luck while his majesty was not fully awake, or are you really strong? As he spoke, Ace Not and several other Quincy summoned their own spirit bows. They bent their bows and shot arrows. Sensing the movement here, Kie turned his head and looked at them with interest. Quincy, your king has been defeated by me, and you dare to attack me alone. Are you tired of living? Jiruji face became ferocious, holding the blue Quincy blade in his left hand and the star seal that had just absorbed Bankai in his right hand. Don't be disrespectful to his majesty in front of me. His majesty is now fully awake, and you can't underestimate him. Holy arrow of destruction, and Bankai ni yang shie ba bao sai. Only from the blue blade in the left hand of Kirujopi, countless blue arrows were shot. The star in the right hand formed Hiriko Shinji's Bankai. The brass petals gradually formed buds. Two terrible abilities attacked at the same time. The faces of the Shinigami around changed drastically, and Kyoka Suigetsu hurriedly shouted in a deep voice. Everyone calm down, don't attack the enemy if you find it. He was worried that the Shinigami around him would be affected by Hiriko Shinji's Bankai again. In addition, it was a bit heavy. I didn't expect that the Bankai taken away by the Quincy could also be used by these Quincy. The situation worsened further. When the Shinigami were nervous, Naya pressed Sui Feng, who was about to attack him, into his arms with his left hand, and pointed his right hand at Kirujopi and smiled. Calm down, I don't want to be stabbed by you twice. Sage Art Yin Dun Lei Pai. I saw that Kai's right hand burst out a dazzling lightning, like the punishment of the gods, instantly defeating the oncoming arrows. Kyūjob's pupils dilated, and he placed the Neong Shie Babao plug on his chest without hesitation. Boom! With the violent bombardment, Kyūjob's figure flew backwards like a cannonball, rumbling and knocking down countless walls, and fell in the ruins of the 4th Division. Ma Jiao, in the dust, Kyūjō spit out a large mouthful of blood. Looking at the hollow in the chest with disbelief. There was a trickle of bright red liquid flowing along the chest, dyeing the gravel under the body red. You can even see the heart at the gap. However, the bright red heart is missing half and no longer beats. How is it possible, such a big gap? Kyūjob's voice was difficult, and he was shocked to ultimate in his heart. I am a member of the Stern Cross Knights, and my strength is considered strong among them. I even got the holy words bestowed by His Majesty himself. How could it be that I couldn't take even one move? Thinking this in my heart, Kyūjob's voice became smaller and smaller, and he gradually lost his breath and fell into the ruins. But even in his corpse state, there was still a look of disbelief in his eyes. The Shinigami around him saw Kyūjob's death. They suddenly became pale and their faces changed suddenly. Chapter 161 New Six Paths Pain, Arrancar Manos Grande joins the battle. Chapter 161 New Six Paths Pain, Arrancar Manos Grande joins the battle. It was a one-hit kill. This human is very strong, it's not a fluke that killed your majesty. The Stern Cross Knights in the Quincy looked unhappy. Kyūjob was actually right. His codename is Jail, which means jail, and he is called Kyūjob of Prison. In the Stern Cross Knights, he is a strong man in the upper middle level. Just now, he even mastered Hiriko Shinji's Bankai. But even so, he was not defeated by Naya. The other party was even chatting with the female Shinigami in his arms. Let me go, you hateful guy. Sui Feng pushed Naya away with a red face. Why did you hold me in your arms? Naya pouted and said, it's not that you were affected by Hiriko Shinji's Bankai, I just want to protect myself. Sui Feng couldn't help but snorted. Then, Sui Feng seemed to have noticed something, looked at Kie suspiciously, approached Kie, and sniffed with his wink. Then, Sui Feng suddenly widened his beautiful eyes, looked at Kie and questioned. Wait, why do you have the smell of Lord Yoruichi on you, and it's not an ordinary smell, it's even stronger. Strong. Chai's eyelids twitched slightly, and felt that all these female Shinigami in Jinglingding were dog noses. That's right. Sui Feng gritted his teeth and looked at Kie. Strong smell, you must have had close contact with Lord Yoruichi, and you didn't wear clothes, ah. Don't snatch it, Tianran is mine, Sui Feng, who felt that he was being cheated, gritted his teeth and rushed over. He fiercely hit Kie with a few B patterns. Seeing the two people who were still making trouble at this time, Kyoka Suigetsu couldn't help coughing twice and said, Kie, have you found the captain and the others? Sui Feng also knew that the situation was urgent. Although he was very angry, he still stopped his hand obediently. Kie breathed a sigh of relief and shook his head. No, I didn't find that old man. At this point, Kie touched his chin. I didn't see Aizen and Yuachi either. Where did the master go? Oh, and the demon sword Muramasa. He wanted to deal with the three most dangerous enemies. Unfortunately, even though Yuhu's free art covered the entire Jingling court, he didn't find the figures of these guys. However, I did find out about the other people's situation. Kie closed his eyes, feeling the information brought by Yuhu's free technique, and smiled with a slight arc on his mouth. My ADBD brother-in-law seems to be beaten to death. And Zaraki Kenpachi, Sister Wa, Katetsu Izan, Abarai Renji, Aizen. Everyone's situation is not good. Hearing Kai's explanation, all the Shinigami present took a breath of cold air. Before, because of the rebellion of the soul-slaying sword, all the captains gathered together, but ignored others. Unexpectedly, the situation was so bad that everyone except them was in danger. DX. Sui Feng couldn't care about Kie anymore, and gritted his teeth and prepared to support other Shinigami. Kyoka Suigetsu and others were also preparing to leave. Wait. Kie stopped them and asked them 10 questions. Are you opponents of those soul-slashing swords in Quincy? The Shinigami captains present were speechless. Although they didn't want to admit it, there were indeed strong enemies among the Quincy, and their strength was not weaker than their captains. And those rebellious Zanhunto, every one of them can use Bankai. In this case, they, the Shinigami, are the weak group. Then we can't just sit there and watch. Hiriko Shinji gritted his teeth. Kyoka Suigetsu nodded and said in a deep voice, especially the Technical Development Bureau of the 12th Division, which must not be destroyed. However, we may not be able to defeat them alone. Kashiwamura Sajin gritted his teeth. I am not good at Kido, and I may be at a disadvantage against those guys. Let me do it. Nanae stretched, and in the surprised eyes of the Shinigami, he slowly stood up and said, I will deal with those enemies of the Seirei. As for you. Speaking of this, Naya pointed to the black rope heavenly punishment Pluton under his feet and the star seal in the distance, and said, hurry up and take back your soul-slashing sword and Bankai, and then study how to prevent them from being taken away. In terms of overall strength, the Quincy is not as good as the Shinigami, which is why they took great pains to take away the Shinigami's Bankai. If this point is not solved, the Shinigami side will not be able to defeat the Quincy. I know, Kyoka Suigetsu nodded, and then looked at Naya. But, how can you help? Everyone is scattered all over the Seirei. Well. Naya raised the corner of his mouth, and slapped the black armor of the Black Robe Heavenly Punishment King. It depends on this. Summoning technique, bang. The white smoke exploded, and in the shocked eyes of everyone present, a cold figure with a wheeling eye walked out of the earth. This is, the former king of Hōgyoku Mundo. And the Arankar Manos Grande that can grow bigger. Tusen Kanami is also in it, the Shinigami present exclaimed. When recognizing the 6 pain figures, they showed an excited expression. They knew Naya's idea. Using these 6 powerful puppets can indeed support others in a short time. After doing all this, Naya did not stop, and the reincarnation Sharingan stared at the space in front of him and shouted. Kamui Black Chamber. Kamui tore the space apart, but it was not a distortion, but a passage between the Shinigami world and Hōgyoku Mundo, which was pure black. Then, from the black passage, Arankar Manos Grande came out one after another. That's Coyote Stark. Kyoka Suigetsu recognized the lazy man in the lead. Tyr Harabel is the maid of Naya. Sui Feng recognized the second Arankar Manos Grande who came out. Then Ulquiorra Cypher, Grimjao Jaegerjackes, Neliel 2 Odelschwank. The pupils of the Quincy on the opposite side shrank. It's Arankar from Hōgyoku Mundo. Ace Knot's face turned ugly. I didn't expect these guys to come to help Shinigami. In the past 1,000 years, they really didn't consider the existence of the Hollow. After all, they only recognized the power of Shinigami. I thought about invading Hōgyoku in advance before Mundo, but was eventually rejected by Aizen Sōsuke because of the presence of Naya there. Grimjao looked at the embarrassed Shinigami, sneered, and said disdainfully with the blade. It's really shameful, Shinigami. You are so embarrassed that we have to save you. Ulquiorra glanced at the Shinigami present, then looked at the Quincy, and said coldly. Are these the enemies? Tyr Harabel drew out the soul-slashing sword, glanced at Sui Feng, and said lightly. It's really useless, Shinigami. Did a mere guy like this defeat you? Chapter 162. Nothingness vs. Fear, Ulquiorra vs. Ace Knot. Chapter 162. Nothingness vs. Fear, Ulquiorra vs. Ace Knot. The many Shinigami present were speechless. Even though they were ridiculed by Arankar Manos Grande, they could not find words to refute. Who said that what he said was not wrong at all? Facing an enemy that was not as good as them, they first had their soul-slaying sword taken away, and then their Bankai was taken away, and they were pressed to the ground. If Naya had not come to support them, at least half of the Shinigami of the Seirei would have been killed or injured. Kyoka Suigetsu smiled bitterly and said, Why are you still talking about this now? These guys are not only our enemies, but also your enemies. Jashiro Yukitaki nodded silently and said, The power of the Quincy is too extreme. If they are allowed to win, the 3 worlds will collapse sooner or later. Grimjao and Arankar Manos Grande snorted, but did not object to these words. The power of Shinigami can make hollows return to the world, but the power of Quincy can make hollows completely disappear from this world. And then break the cycle of Soul Society, Hōgyoku Mundo, and the present world. Then all 3 worlds will collapse. I'll leave it to you here. Naya stretched, looked into the distance and said, I'll go save my brother-in-law and find the location of that guy by the way. I understand, Master Naya, leave it to us. Ulquiorra nodded indifferently, then looked at the Quincy opposite, and slowly drew out the soul-slashing sword. Grimjao put his hands in his pockets, looked at the Quincy opposite with contempt and said, Quincy, I will be your opponent next. Neluel, who had transformed into a queen, said calmly, Nana, don't worry, leave this to me, there will be no problem, yes. Nana nodded, feeling very relieved about the situation here, and disappeared in a flash. After Nana left, Kashiwamura Sajin walked towards the Black Robe Heavenly Punishment King, and said to Arankar Manos Grande who had just arrived, You have to be careful, those guys are not weak, and they can also take away our Bankai. After hearing about the ability of the Quincy, Arankar Manos Grande, who was present, remained calm. Ulquiorra took the lead and walked towards the Quincy Ace Knot. With a strong Ryatsu on his body, he said indifferently, Your so-called Star Seal can take away the Shinigami's Bankai, but, can it take away our return blade? While speaking, Ulquiorra raised his soul-slashing sword and said indifferently, Seal it, Black-Winged Demon. The moment the voice fell, the green nothingness Ryatsu spread, bursting out a strong sense of oppression, and the meaning of darkness spread. The black wings that covered the sky formed. Ulquiorra's black nails turned into long claws, his hair became longer, and his tear marks also deepened and thickened. The soul-slashing sword turned into a green spear. Seeing Ulquiorra's changes, the faces of the Quincy on the opposite side became ugly. Even if they held the Star Seal in their hands, they were not in the mood to use it. Because unlike Shinigami, Manos Grande's return blade acts directly on the body and is a part of the body, and it cannot be taken away at all. Even Aizen Sōsuke was helpless about this. Arankar's hollow? Ace not looked as cold as Ulquiorra, stepped forward and said indifferently. For you Manos Grande, there is no need to take away your abilities, because you are just lambs to be slaughtered. Really? Ulquiorra replied indifferently, and then raised the green spear in the shocked eyes of the Shinigami and the Quincy and said. What if it is this power? Second stage resurrection. Tisk, second stage resurrection. Grimjow couldn't help curling his lips, feeling envious and jealous, and could only say. Second stage resurrection is nothing, sooner or later I will be able to master it. During the Aizen Sōsuke period, he was the 5th Espada and Ulquiorra was the 4th Espada, and the gap between the two was not big. But with Ulquiorra mastering the second stage resurrection, the gap between the two instantly widened. If it was when Espada was still there, he would still be the 5th Espada, but Ulquiorra would be at least the 20 millionth. Instantly, the sky darkened. Ryūjin from the hollow covered the sky. At this moment, all the Quincy, Shinigami, all changed their expressions and cast their shocked eyes on Ulquiorra. Ulquiorra's upper body clothes disappeared, black liquid flowed from his eyes, the lower part of the tear marks was too, and the white of his eyes turned green. 0. The abdomen to the legs, arms and back were covered with black feathers, the lower part of the robe was divided into 2 halves, the wings were fully opened, revealing bat-like claws. A long tail that can be freely controlled has a bone object similar to a knife at the tip of the tail. There are sharp claws on the feet. The hollow hole becomes larger, and black patterns appear from the hollow hole to the abdomen. From a distance, it looks like a demon from hell, flying in the air with wings, staring coldly at the opposite Quincy. What is this? Kashiwamura Sajan looked at Ulquiorra in shock. So far, I have never felt such a powerful and special Ryūjin, it is as heavy as the ocean. .0 Kiraku Shunsui nodded and said solemnly. This Ulquiorra, in my opinion, is more terrible than the original Hōgyoku Mundo King Baragan. Hitsugaya Toshiro couldn't help but say. Fortunately, at that time, this person did not come to the world with Aizen Sōsuke. Suifeng nodded. It seems that he should have stayed in Hōgyoku Mundo and was defeated by Naya after meeting Naya. Hollows. Among those fallen souls, there are actually such monsters. The robot Quincy by Janine looked solemnly, and the second one was originally in his impression that hollows were just objects that Quincy could slaughter at will. I didn't expect that such a strong man would be born after 1,000 years. Ace Not said coldly. We are not opponents alone, let others come quickly. He hadn't finished his words. He saw Ulquiorra in the second stage of the return to the blade posture, spreading the devil's black wings, like a black light attack. $71. Ace Not's pupils dilated, and he subconsciously wanted to use the blood quiet suit. But his speed was far inferior to Ulquiorra. I saw Ulquiorra flying over, pressing his head with a devil-like palm, and slamming him to the ground. Boom. A deafening roar sounded. A big pit was blasted out of the ground, and dust and smoke rose up. The solid floor tiles of the jingling court, which were condensed by spirit particles, spread out countless cracks. Chapter 163. Die in the fear of nothingness, sing, Antelope Night. Chapter 163. Died in the fear of nothingness, sing praises, Antelope Night. Ace Not. The faces of the Quincy present suddenly change. The members of the Stern Cross Knights who saw this scene from a distance also changed their faces. Ace Not, whose holy letter is F, meaning fear, symbolizes the ability of fear, and is also a very powerful Quincy. In the eyes of his companions, Ace Not can even defeat Shinigami using Bankai. And now, he was smashed into the ground by someone. Ah! Ace Not's screams came from the smoke and dust. Being hit by Ulquiorra in the second stage of the return blade posture, even though he was very strong, he was severely injured in an instant. The voice stopped abruptly, which seemed very abrupt. It seemed that in the previous hit, Ace Not was on the verge of death, and the scream just now was his last song. In response, 707, Kiyora's expression remained indifferent. He waved his demon, his wings stagnated in midair, and looked at the pit dust below. You are not dead yet, I can feel your Ryūjin, Ulquiorra said indifferently. He ranked 4th among the Espada during the Aizen Sōsuke period, and his representative way of death was nothingness, which was indifferent to the ultimate nothingness. Even when facing a weak enemy, he would not be careless, and would only kill the opponent ruthlessly. Facing such an indifferent enemy, Ace Not could only give up the idea of sneak attack, and his cold voice came from the dust. Perfect holy body cowardice of God. The power of the holy text and the perfect holy body were activated at the same time. Ace Not's figure emerged from the dust, but it had changed drastically compared to before. There were multiple spiked circular halos on his head, blood oozing from under his eyes, and the bones of his upper body and chest were exposed. Wearing black long gloves on both arms, wearing a white close-fitting robe, and 2 thorn-like line-ringed spirit wings on the back. Gold traces extend from the throat to the lower skirt. There is a hideous feeling of an angel falling into a stitched evil ghost. In this state, the fear, power possessed by the holy word of Ace Not is greatly enhanced. He waved his hand and said indifferently, giant eye wall. In the sky, thousands of eyes opened out of thin air, forming a wall, like an eye wall, and people who saw it suddenly felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. Damn, What did that damn bald guy do? Why am I so scared? Sarugaki Hiyori took a step back and looked at the thousands of black eyes in front of her with fear. The moment she was seen by the giant eye, her whole body seemed to be filled with fear. She was very scared, but she was not the only one. Even the Shinigami captains, such as Hitsugaya Dashiro and Jashiro Yukitaki, all showed some expressions of fear. The surrounding Quincy breathed a sigh of relief, took a look at Ace Knot's current posture, and sneered. Idiot, this is the power of his Quincy. Ace Knot's holy text has the ability of fear. Any enemy stared at by the eye wall will be paralyzed by fear. Even if you close your eyes, you still can't defend against the effect of fear, and it will enhance the power of fear. In the end, your heart will burn out and suffocate to death. A Quincy suddenly froze for a moment, and looked at Ulquiorra Cypher, whose face was still cold. Why doesn't this guy react at all? Everyone present quickly looked at Ulquiorra, but they found that he didn't even have any expression when facing the eye wall that made his scalp numb, let alone react. Grimmjow sneered and said disdainfully, Idiot, Ulquiorra represents nothingness. Nothingness, the deepest indifference, how could there be any extra emotions? In fact, in the original book, even when facing imminent death, Ulquiorra still had no fear at all. Nothingness. Ace Knot's pupils dilated, looking at Ulquiorra in disbelief, never expecting such a result. The enemy he faced was nothingness that had no fear. Looking at Ace Knot's figure, Ulquiorra raised his hand with an indifferent expression, and a green spirit spear appeared in his hand. Aimed at Ace Knot and shot. How is it possible? Ace Knot could no longer maintain an indifferent expression, his face became ferocious, and his body expanded again. God's cowardice hyphenation point final form. As he roared, a large amount of blood spurted out of the suture mark in the center of Ace Knot's body. The outer skin of the original body was peeled off and suspended outside the head, and the body became horrifying. The eyeballs were bulging. The ribs were exposed. The lower limbs were twisted. The volume was much larger than the Seirei building, and it was like a giant, like a demon. After entering this posture, Ace Knot's devil-like blue palm desperately grabbed the attacking emerald green spear. However, it was penetrated directly by the emerald green spear. Emerald green Ryūjin burst out in his body. At this moment, Ace Knot's devil-like body expanded again, as if it was inflated with a lot of air and turned into a balloon. Ah, I won't give up, Ace Knot roared with a hideous face, and his body exploded like a balloon in the process of roaring. Boom! The sound and airwave of the explosion rushed straight to the sky. A huge pit was blasted out on the spot, and the surrounding walls were broken and collapsed. The world suddenly returned to peace. In the 1,000-year bloody battle, Ace Knot, who defeated Byakuya Kuchiki and even frightened him to the ultimate, died in the Ulquiorra hand song. He's dead. Just now, the Quincy present stared blankly at the place where Ace Knot died. It was unimaginable that Ace Knot, who ranked high among the Stern Cross Knights, was killed alone in a one-on-one situation. Let's go. The robot Quincy by J9 was ready to lead his men away without hesitation. Grimmjow sneered and said, What? Ulquiorra killed an enemy, but I haven't done anything yet. As he spoke, powerful blue fangs burst out from his body, and he roared like a cheetah. Crunch, Panther King. Instantly, Grimmjow also entered the return blade posture, like a white cheetah, with long blue hair fluttering, and the Panther Lord's Claw 3.7 appeared on his hand. With just a slight step, he rushed towards Bai J9 at the speed of ultimate. Seeing this, Nelluel also raised her soul-severing sword and said calmly, Grimmjow, get rid of this guy as quickly as possible, there are still many Shinigami waiting for us to save. Originally, seeing someone snatching his prey, a dangerous look flashed in Grimmjow's eyes. But when he heard that Shinigami were to be saved, Grimmjow couldn't help showing a hint of excitement and ignored Nelluel who joined the battle. Ha ha ha, that's right, let's save those trash. He laughed loudly and waved the Panther King's claw. Nelluel didn't waste any words, waved the soul-severing sword and said calmly. Sing, Antelope Knight. The queen with lake green long hair suddenly turned into a half-human, half-goat form, holding a heavy spear and attacking. Chapter 164. Waterflow that defeats ice, powerful water-style ninjutsu. Chapter 164. The waterflow that defeats the ice, the powerful water-style ninjutsu. Ha ha ha, Quincy, die. Grimmjow laughed loudly, and his figure like a white cheetah quickly wandered around Bai J9. It was so fast that only a white afterimage could be seen. When he appeared behind Bai J9, he pointed his right hand at his heart and shouted in a defiant tone. Wang Shu's flash, the dazzling blue light cut through the sky. Wearing an axe-shaped iron mask similar to that of a medieval knight, Bai J9's whole body was mechanical, and his eyes burst into red light. Metal pipes spread out from his back, connecting and twisting to form a shield. Sero and the shield collided with a bang. The strong impact made Bai J9 stagger a few steps. But it did not cause any injuries. Bai J9 turned his head and said in a very mechanical voice. Arrancar Menos Grande, you are wrong. I didn't have any so-called life at the beginning, so there is no such thing as death. As a member of the Quincy whose whole body has been transformed into a machine, his physical defensibility is also the strongest among the Quincy. While speaking, dozens of missiles were shot out from the mechanical body under his cloak. The missiles with flaming tails hit Grimmjow and Neluel like flying birds, and a large amount of spiritual power was compressed in them. Really, so many troublesome things. In the distance, Stark scratched his hair helplessly, and his spiritual power burst out. 2 more muskets appeared in his hands, aiming at the missiles in the sky. It's better to solve it quickly. I don't like you, Quincy, either. Infinite reload, Sero. As Stark pulled the trigger, a dazzling blue light burst out from the muzzle, and in just 1 second, thousands of Sero were shot out. Continuous explosions were heard in the sky. The missiles released by Baiji and Nyan were blown up by the hollow before they could get close to Grimmjow and Neluel, too. Red flowers exploded in the sky, and the sky was dyed with fire. Sero has more missiles than me. Baiji and Nyan was shocked, and then panic flashed. Without hesitation, he used his Shinwan ability to escape, too. The cross pattern belonging to the Quincy appeared in the sky. But at this moment, Grimmjow appeared in front of him, with a defiant look, waving the nearly 2-meter blue leopard king claw. If you have the ability, block it for me. Not far away, Neluel, in the form of half man and half goat, had a queen style, a cold expression, and raised the double-headed spear in her hand. Die. Emerald shooter. The double-headed spear rotated at high speed, bursting out the purple Ryatsu that belonged to Neluel. Being attacked both near and far, BG9's face changed, and he was extremely frightened, trying to speed up the formation of the holy body. But he was still a step slower. Abu, Grimmjow's blue leopard king claws cut through the steel on his body like a sharp knife, leaving 5 deep wounds. Swish. The light red spear was like a javelin, cutting through the air, sending out a piercing spear, piercing his heart and blasting him away. Continuous roars continued to sound. It was not until he was blasted away for hundreds of meters that BG Kuimo's figure slowly stopped working. His body was nailed to the wall by a double-headed spear. There was no blood, but the mechanical body had already been broken into pieces, with a constant rustling sound and falling steel parts. Still alive. Grimmjow looked at Baija 9 with a defiant look. For Manos Grande, judging whether the enemy is still alive is not to look at the opponent's injuries, but to see whether there is still Ryatsu in the opponent's body. Baija 9 raised his head with difficulty and looked at Grimmjow, who was walking towards him. He was terrified and couldn't help begging for mercy. Wait, don't kill me, you can capture me, maybe we can exchange prisoners with our empire. Too embarrassing. Quincy. Grimmjow sneered, walked in front of him, and waved the Panther King's claw without hesitation, completely tearing the mechanical coin apart. The members of the Stern Cross Knights who saw this scene from a distance fell into silence. Unexpectedly, 2 companions died just like that. And the other Arrancar Manos Grande didn't even have any injuries on their bodies. Hueco Mundo, beyond my imagination. Menina Macaron, a pink-haired girl and a member of the Stern Cross Knights, looked serious. It's a bit troublesome. Let's go find those soul-slaying swords quickly. Pepe Vicabrata, a fat black man from the Stern Cross Knights, said. Now all the captains have gathered together, plus Arrancar Manos Grande who came to support. It is undoubtedly a very hard bone to chew. They are not opponents alone, and they need to call all the members of the Stern Cross Knights and the embodied soul-slaying swords. No one objected, and the Legion quickly retreated to the distance. When the embodied Hiranmaru saw this scene, his expression was still indifferent, but his body suddenly turned into an ice dragon and rushed straight into the sky. This is his true body. It is not a human form, but the water dragon form of Hiranmaru. Wait, Hiranmaru. Hitsugaya Toshiro's face changed, and he tried to stop his soul-slaying sword. But at this time, Hiranmaru was in Bankai posture, and the frost dragon-like body just flapped its wings, and a blizzard filled the sky. It was the power of Hiranmaru to control the sky. As the master, Hitsugaya Toshiro could not make any progress in the ice and snow. DX. Hitsugaya Toshiro could not help but grit his teeth. 640. Before this, he had never thought that his soul-slaying sword would be so troublesome. He could only watch the other party fly away, but just as Hiranmaru flew into the sky, Tyr Harabel below looked at it. Water-style water dragon bomb. Tyr Harabel did not draw out the soul-slaying sword, but formed seals with both hands, and spit out a strong stream of water from his red lips. It actually condensed into a vivid water dragon. The water dragon flew into the sky and entangled Hiranmaru, who had turned into an ice dragon. It dragged it down. The water style that Kie taught me is very compatible with me. Looking at the falling ice dragon, Tyr Harabel's red lips curled up slightly. The ability of her soul-slashing sword is water flow, and the posture after returning to the blade can control a larger water flow. The adaptability to water-style ninjutsu is the strongest. And the water style she uses is almost 10 times stronger than other Manos Grande. Roar. The ice dragon transformed by Hiranmaru roared, and a piercing cold air burst out of its body, directly freezing the water dragon and tearing it apart. Just when it wanted to take off, Tyr Harabel had already appeared above its head, pulled out the soul-slashing sword and said coldly. Conquer him, the Queen of the Sea. Almost a huge amount of water burst out, and in the roar, it drowned the 6th division of the Seirei, forming a vast ocean. Chapter 165. The Cruel Female Quincy, Bambietta Basta. Chapter 165. Cruel Quincy Female, Bambietta Bastabayan. The surging water is as violent as the sea. The surging waves are one after another, making the entire 6th Division flooded with water. The Shinigami who was originally in the 6th Division was directly swept by the surging water and struggled desperately, but was still washed out of the 6th Division by the water. My heart was full of shock and depression. This beautiful woman Arrancar is really powerful. She actually created an ocean in a waterless place. No way. Looking at the whistling violent water, Hitsugaya Toshiro frowned and quickly looked at Tear Harabel and said, "Woman, my Hiranmaru is the strongest ice-type soul-slashing sword, which naturally restrains water and fire. You alone are no match for it, let your companions." Humph. Tear Harabel snorted coldly, interrupted Hitsugaya Toshiro's words, and said, "Ice restrains water. Are you saying you can beat me? Don't be so arrogant, Shinigami brat. In the last war, if it weren't for Naya, a human, helping you, do you think you could defeat us?" Hitsugaya Toshiro's face turned black, but he closed his mouth without rain. Because the current combat power of the Seirei is really not as good as these Arrancar Menos Grande in Hueco Mundo. No more nonsense. A flash of cold light flashed in Tear Harabel's beautiful eyes. He waved the pure white broadsword in his hand and fiercely stabbed the ice dragon under his feet, shouting, "Break the waterfall." A powerful stream of water burst out from the blade. It was round, like a waterfall falling from the sky, and it crashed into the ice dragon's head. After this heavy blow, no matter how the ice dragon roared, its body was smashed to the ground, fell into the waterflow, and froze the surroundings. As the ice spread, the ice dragon roared again in the ice. The dense water molecules in the air froze quickly. In the blink of an eye, many thousand-year-old ice prisons formed by pure white ice that penetrated the sky and the earth were formed. At the same time, snowflakes fell from the sky. Seeing this, Hitsugaya Toshiro quickly reminded, "Be careful, this is the 1,000-year ice prison in the Ice Sky 100 Flowers burial, don't let hundreds of snowflakes fall on you." Before he finished speaking, he saw Tear Harabel forming a seal with one hand, while waving the pure white soul-slaying sword, and said indifferently, "Water-style Great Waterfall Technique, Water-style Great Shark Bomb Technique. Water-style Great Shark Bomb Technique." 3 consecutive extremely powerful water styles were launched. First a violent waterfall fell from the sky, and then thousands of sharks condensed in the water. Each shark was condensed by the water, showing blue, and biting the ice dragon's body frantically. Immediately afterwards, a large amount of water condensed a giant shark with sharp fangs, biting the ice dragon's wings fiercely. The pure white ice dragon's wings were torn and shattered. The ice dragon incarnated by Hiranmaru screamed. The ice dragon posture is Hiranmaru's body, and the injury to the wings means Hiranmaru was severely injured, and the embodiment of it was seriously injured. The biting cold air spread from the body, and the ice dragon struggled hard among thousands of sharks. But facing the sharp teeth of thousands of sharks, the ice dragon could not break free at all, but the icy water condensed in the body kept breaking. Seeing such a scene, Hitsugaya Toshiro was almost dumbfounded and couldn't help rubbing his eyes. "The shark made of water bit my Hiranmaru." His voice seemed a little dry. Ice is superior to water, and now in front of him, the shark formed by the water flow actually suppressed the embodiment of the strongest ice-type soul-slaying sword. It was simply the opposite of Tiangong, the opposite restraint. This also indirectly shows that the strength of the female Menos Grande in front of him is stronger than himself. Seeing the dumbfounded Hitsugaya Toshiro, Tear Harabel said bluntly, "Little ghost, are you going to let me tear your soul-slaying sword into pieces?" Hearing Tear Harabel's words, Hitsugaya Toshiro finally reacted and hurried over to pull out the soul-slaying sword. Surrounded by countless sharks, he put the Hiranmaru in his hand on the head of the ice dragon. The embodiment of the soul-slaying sword was retracted into its body. At this point, all the enemies present fell. Kyoka Suigetsu breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help looking up at the sky, saying, "I wonder how the others are doing, especially the old man. Is he safe?" In the past, he would not worry about the safety of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Because he is the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, the strongest in 1,000 years, and has never been defeated in 1,000 years. He has the soul-slaying sword Ryūjin Ruome that can destroy the world. But after hearing Nanaya's words, he began to worry about old man Yamamoto. After all, the old man's character is indeed a bit arrogant and careless. Whether it is the defection of the embodiment of the soul-slaying sword, or the star seal in the hands of the Quincy, in his opinion, what is used to deal with and restrict old man Yamamoto is Ryūjin Jakka. Jashiro Yukitaki comforted him. "Calm down, Nanaya has gone to find the teacher, there shouldn't be any big problems." Kyoka Suigetsu could only nod his head, praying in his heart that he could save Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Seirei, inside the Tianbin team, Byakuya Kuchiki, Abarai Renji, Matsumoto Rangaku, the 3 of them were covered in blood at this time, looking at the figures on the opposite side unwillingly. "Captain Kuchiki, your soul-slaying sword is really as cold as you are. You can use such a heavy hand against women." Looking at the red iron warrior holding Senbon Sakura on the opposite side, Matsumoto Rangaku gritted his teeth and said. Speaking of which, can these concrete soul-slaying swords use Bankai? Hearing Matsumoto Rangaku's words, Byakuya Kuchiki was fine, but Abarai Renji twitched his mouth and said. Vice Captain Matsumoto, please stop talking. The three soul-slaying swords on the opposite side are so troublesome even in the Shikai state. If it were Bankai, they would probably be chopped into pieces. On the opposite side, the three members of the Stern Cross Knights, the Black Fat Pepe Waka, Dachian Zhao, Brada, looked at the three people proudly and said. Shinigami, this is the masterpiece of your Shinigami, Aizen Sōsuke, how could you not use your Bankai? Doris Belshi, who looks like a beast, has a black beard and looks extremely rough, looked at Byakuya Kuchiki with contempt. I heard that you were the head of one of the four major families of Seirei, but I didn't expect that you only have this little ability. Open black lens bracket 014501503 Philo 192001031. Beside the two of them, there was a female Quincy, wearing a military cap with an invisible imperial mark and long hair that reached her waist. She wore a short skirt, a heart-shaped badge on her chest, a heart-shaped badge belt, black stockings and boots. She gave people a particularly dangerous sense of temptation. Looking at Byakuya Kuchiki, she couldn't help but lick her red lips with her tongue, waving the soul-slaying sword in her hand, and said in a cruel voice. Byakuya Kuchiki, it's really interesting. I wonder if you can still be as calm as you are now after cutting off your hands and feet. Chapter 166. Timely Relief, King of Hueco Mundo comes to help. Chapter 166 Timely Rain, the King of Hueco Mundo came to help. Looking at the beautiful Quincy in white robes opposite Byakuya Kuchiki, Abarai Renji, Matsumoto Rangaku, the three of them were not careless at all, and all looked at her with cold faces. After the battle just now, they have seen the true nature of this female Quincy. Under that pretty face, there is an extremely cruel and twisted soul. Clearly in the battle just now, the Quincy side had the upper hand, but this female Quincy deliberately held back and abused them. At least half of the injuries on their bodies were left by this female Quincy. Bambietta, you should have had enough fun, right? Doris Belshi sneered and said, kill these two guys quickly, I still have to find other Shinigami. Pepe Wakabrada nodded, and sneered on his dark and fat face. Let these Shinigami die under their own swords, this is the most suitable death for them. Bambietta Bastabayan was a little reluctant, but still nodded, looked at the three concrete soul-slaying swords and said. Senbon Sakura, Zabumaru, Hineka, kill your master 647, so that you can be completely free. Byakuya Kuchiki's Soul Zan sword Senbon Sakura materializes into a warrior king wearing a ferocious mask and a headdress with sakura petals on his head. Abarai Renji's Soul Zan sword Zabumaru materializes into an adult monkey girl and a young snake boy connected by a chain. Matsumoto Rangaku's Soul Zan sword Hineka materializes into a pink cat girl with cat ears and a cat tail, wearing a pink singlet and pumpkin pants. After hearing the order of Bambietta Bastabayan, the first two materialized Soul Zan swords no longer hesitated and spoke at the same time. Bankai Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi, Bankai Baboon King Zabumaru. Around the former, there were 2 rows of giant white blades everywhere. As the wind blew, the 2 rows of giant blades gradually turned into billions of sakura petals. The latter in the hands of the snake man Zabumaru suddenly turned into a giant skeleton snake with spikes and red fur on the head. 2 powerful Bankai aimed at their masters at the same time. Seeing this, Hineka, who looked like a pink cat girl, looked at Matsumoto Rangaku with dissatisfaction, pinched her waist and said, big-breasted and brainless woman, if you were a little smarter, I wouldn't have been unsolvable. Matsumoto Rangaku was immediately furious. You are my soul-slaying sword. Scolding me is equivalent to scolding you. Hineka pouted and said, that was in the past. Now I have gained freedom and am no longer your soul-slaying sword. Go to hell obediently. As she said that, she moved the blade in her hand and said, mutter, Hineka. The blade spread out like Senbon Sakura, but it did not form sakura flowers, but formed wisps of yellow sand. Bambietta Bastabayan showed a cruel smile, licked her lips and said, Senbon Sakura, I like you very much, you must cut Byakuya Kuchiki into pieces, or let me do it. While she was talking, the 3 concrete soul-slaying swords had already launched an attack on their former masters. The sky full of sakura flowers rushed towards Byakuya Kuchiki like a river. The hideous skeleton snake opened its mouth to Abarai Renji and condensed a red spiritual power shell. The gray sand spread towards Matsumoto Rangaku. At this moment, Byakuya Kuchiki and the other 2 changed their faces suddenly, and quickly took out their soul-slaying swords to resist, and even launched the Shikai of the soul-slaying swords. But under the attack of 2 Bankai, 1 Shikai, and 3 Quincy of the Star Thousand Knights, their counterattack seemed so weak. In just a few seconds, the 3 were cut with countless wounds by the sakura flowers in the sky, and Abarai Renji's left arm was even pierced by a blue arrow. Kageyoshi, Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi. The red samurai swung his soul-slaying sword, and sakura flowers filled the air from all directions, quickly surrounding the 3 people. He tried to lock them up and kill them with countless sakura flowers. Damn it! Captain Kuchiki, your soul-slaying sword is too strong. Abarai Renji looked at the sakura flowers in despair. If ADBG only had his own Zabumaru, he would not be so desperate. After all, one's own sword is known to one's own family. Although the baboon king Zabumaru is huge, it is not suitable for dealing with flexible prey and it is difficult to injure them severely. But Byakuya Kuchiki's Senbon Sakura is different. This sword can be said to be all-round and has no dead angles. It is difficult for the enemy targeted by it to even escape. Matsumoto Rangaku's eyes flashed with despair. Even Byakuya Kuchiki, who has aristocratic temperament, felt a little suffocated at this moment. Bambietta Basta Bayan saw the three people on the verge of despair and showed a cruel smile, with a fiery look in her eyes. What she likes to do most is to kill men as a means of venting her emotions. The more handsome the person, the more excited she is to kill. Just in the billions when the sakura flower was about to skin the three alive, a deep black mist gradually spread in the air. Any sakura flower that came into contact with the black mist turned into nothingness and disappeared. Abarai Renji's face changed, and he looked at the black mist in front of him in shock, and recognized the identity of the black mist. X1. The former king of Hōgyoku Mundo. In the war in Karakura Town, Baragan's aging ability shocked a large number of Shinigami, and he still couldn't forget it. But, the former king of Hōgyoku Mundo is dead, and was killed by Naya. Matsumoto Rangaku said, with a sudden surprise in his eyes, and quickly looked around. Is it Naya? Did he come to support us? Byakuya Kuchiki and Abarai Renji also reacted and looked around for Nanaya's figure. Abarai Renji said excitedly, it must be him, he has the ability to make people into puppets, he must have used the ability of the king of Hōgyoku Mundo. It's the former king of Hōgyoku Mundo. Not far away, in the black mist, Baragan Luisenbaron in the state of returning to the blade walked out. Or rather, it was Nanaya's Hell Pain. The whole body was a skeleton, wearing a black spiritual power fire robe, a crown, and holding a black scythe in his hand. Seeing the appearance of Hell Pain, the three of them were in a room at first, and then reacted. Byakuya Kuchiki exhaled, his expression returned to aloofness again, and said lightly, you came at the right time, and you did a good job. As the eldest brother-in-law, he felt that he had to be aloof and not be looked down upon by this human. Matsumoto Rangaku and Abarai Renji were full of excitement. At this critical moment, Naya rescued them, not to mention how moved they were. Huh. Hell Road Pain, who was controlled by Kie, tilted his head and said. What are you talking about? I just watched for a long time, okay. I just saw that you were about to give up, so I chose to attack. The expressions of the three people froze on their faces instantly. Byakuya Kuchiki could no longer remain cool, and looked at Hell Road Pain with a twitching mouth, gritting his teeth and said. You said, you just watched for a long time. Chapter 167. Disgusting Love, Aging vs. Love. Chapter 167. Disgusting Love, Aging vs. Love. At this moment, Byakuya Kuchiki and the other two all had an urge to kill. The emotion they had just felt disappeared. They all looked at Hellpath Pain with gnashing teeth. Matsumoto Rangaku looked at Hellpath Pain with a bad look. Mr. Naya, can I ask when did you start watching it? Naya thought for a moment and said, when you were chased and beaten by Senbon Sakura, Zabumaru, Hineka, and the three Quincy's. Hearing this, the three of them almost vomited blood. So you came here so early, and just watched the three of us get beaten. Speaking of which, Kie said with some gloating. You are really in a mess, you can't even beat your own soul-slaying sword. Abarai Renji was so angry that he almost vomited blood, clenched his fists, and asked with gritted teeth. Kie, do you want to wait for us to kill them? In the expectant eyes of the three people, Kie shook his head happily and said with a smile. No, I just saw that my eldest brother-in-law was beaten so badly, and I was a little reluctant to come to save you. X. Byakuya Kuchiki's forehead was throbbing with veins, and he wished that Rukia Kuchiki would be a widow today. What a damn brother-in-law. He actually watched the excitement of his eldest brother-in-law from the side. This guy. The three Quincy's looked serious. He is the most dangerous human, but he looks like a puppet. Bambietta Bastabayan's eyes flashed with cruelty, and she said, since he is just a puppet, there is no need to retreat, just kill him here. The three of them no longer had the idea of teasing Shinigami, and entered the holy body posture without hesitation. A five-pointed star appeared on Bambietta Bastabayan's head, and the tips of the wings stretched out from her back, showing a separated spirit. The wings were pink, as if burning with flames. A five-pointed star appeared on Pepe Vicabrata's head, the corners of his beard rose, and wings with eyes grew on his back. He was only wearing underwear and shoes. Not to mention whether he was powerful or not, the appearance alone gave people a sense of déjà vu. The last Doris Belshi, however, did not use the perfect body of the Quincy, but took out the round star badge and sneered. Human, enjoy the Shinigami's Bankai, this Bankai is very strong. The voice fell. He raised the star badge in his hand and shouted. Bankai Wang Wang Yanling Ligung. The Bankai he took away was activated, bursting out with dazzling golden light, like a canopy of a noble, but these are all composed of lightning. The golden Ryatsu was released into the air, causing the electrons in the air to condense into a huge Ryatsu, and the sky was overcast and an elliptical lightning appeared. The lightning was divided into 11 rays, and these 11 rays of lightning were gathered on the blade to attack the enemy. Shojiro Sasaki's Bankai. Looking at the familiar thunder light, Tianyi raised his eyebrows. How did you get it? Unlike the 1,000-year bloody battle, Shojiro Sasaki is not dead now. Under the cover of the Rain Tiger Freedom Technique just now, it was clear that the guy was like a headless fly, looking for old man Yamamoto all over the world. Does this have anything to do with you? Dorisk Belshi sneered, swung the soul-slaying sword and said. Anyway, you will die here. The blade swung down, and countless golden lightnings attacked Kie like rain. Bambietta Bastabayan flashed a cruel smile, waved his red wings, and countless red light balls flew out from the wings. Pepe Vacabrata, who turned into a disgusting black fat man, licked his lips, stretched out his hands and said ambiguously. Rope of love. From the end of his fingers, a rope composed of multiple heart shapes shot out and attacked. On the other side, Senbon Sakura, Zabumaru, Hineka, all attacked Naya at the same time. The strongest attacks of 6 captains came. Even Byakuya Kuchiki changed his face and said in a deep voice. Naya, get out of the way quickly, this is not your real body. If Nanaya's real body came, he would not have any worries. But now there is only a puppet. Naya waved the black sickle in his hand, patted the Shinigami version of the skull on the cheek, and smiled. Don't underestimate my Hell Road, this guy is now the strongest one among my pain, this level is nothing. Facing the oncoming 6 paths attack, the Hell Road pain controlled by Naya suddenly hit the black double-sided giant axe. The Ryatsu of itself and Nanaya's Ryatsu burst out at the same time. The black double-edged axe slashed down against the 6 paths attack, and the endless black mist burst out from the blade, covering the 6 paths attack. It can be clearly seen. 0. Ask for flowers. 0. Thunder, red sphere, love rope, sakura flower petals, skeleton snake, yellow sand. The moment the 6 attacks touched the black mist, it seemed as if countless revolutions had passed in an instant. Even the thunder was aged to nothingness. This guy, Ryatsu, is so strong. Pepe Wakabrata looked at Jigokudo Pain in shock. Just a puppet has this kind of Ryatsu. It is hard to imagine how strong the Ryatsu of Naya as the main body is. The 6 paths attack was completely swallowed up by the black aging mist. Even the attacks of 6 captains still did not hurt Jigokudo Pain. 014501503 Falu 192,001,301. Pepe Wakabrata said loudly. This guy is so strong, I'm a little in love with him, let me give him an arrow of love. You are so disgusting. Jigokudo Pain interrupted him with a cold voice. I saw that Hell Road Pain, who was controlled by Kie, had come to Pepe Vacabrata at some point. He stared at him with a cold and disgusted voice, and waved the black double-edged axe in his hand. Even though there were 6 enemies, and the other 2 Quincy were stronger than Pepe Vacabrata. But Kie was still ready to kill this disgusting black fat man. Not to mention that he was so ugly, he always shouted about love, and letting him live was a huge insult to Vision. T7. Pepe Vacabrata's pupils contracted, and a horrified expression appeared on his fat face. He retreated to the distance without hesitation. While retreating, he made a heart shape with his hands and shouted loudly. Kiss of love. From his heart-shaped gesture, a red light burst out, forming a heart, and attacked Hell Road Pain like a laser. Seeing this scene, Kie, who was controlling Hell Pain, almost vomited. Too disgusting, it would be fine to change to a prettier woman, why this black fat guy? Did Blackbeard use the Empress's sweet fruit? Kie suppressed his nausea, and controlled Hell Pain with a cold face, stretched out his right hand, and fiercely grabbed Pepe Vacabrata's right hand, and said coldly. I declare that I will age you into a pile of rotten bones, go to hell. The black mist burst out, it swallowed Pepe Vacabrata whole. At a speed visible to the naked eye, Pepe Vacabrata's right hand was aged into a pile of rotten bones by the black mist. Chapter 168. Hell, Dorisk with his tongue torn off. Chapter 168. Hell, Dorisk with his tongue torn off. Pepe Vacabrata looked at his right hand in horror, and when he saw the bones, he let out a heart-wrenching scream. Watching the bones turn into flesh and his right hand turn into dry bones. This requires a strong ability to endure. But Pepe Vacabrata obviously does not have this ability to endure. The flesh turning into bones made him collapse directly. He stretched out his left hand desperately, and shot out 5 chains of love from it. But it was too late. Hell Pain had an indifferent expression and grabbed the bones formed by his right hand, which were covered with black mist and spread up along his arm. Shoulder bones, calf bones, ribs. Wherever the black mist went, Dorisk Belshi's flesh was corroded by aging at a speed visible to the naked eye, as if 1,000 years had passed, and the pale bones were exposed. August 13th. When the black fog disappeared, only a human-shaped skeleton was left. With a crash, it collapsed to the ground. The skeleton corroded by aging crackled and shattered all over the ground. Some of the more corroded bones turned directly into bone powder. And all this seemed very slow, in fact, it only happened in a moment. In the eyes of others, Nanaya's Hell Road Pain just appeared behind the enemy, and the enemy aged into a white skeleton. The speed was so fast that it was almost unbelievable. No way. Matsumoto Rangaku covered his mouth. Some were shocked by the scene in front of them, and never thought that the enemy would be killed like this. In fact, as the former king of Hueco Mundo, Baragan Louisenbaron's ability is very terrible. In the original work, Shinigami also paid a price, such as Sui Feng was seriously injured and Hashijin was broken arm, so he was killed. In terms of strength alone, Baragan Louisenbaron is at least as strong as Kyoraku Shunsui and Shinigami. After becoming Nanaya's Hell Pen, his strength has not decreased but increased. In terms of spiritual power alone, he is even stronger than Kyoraku Shunsui. Looking at the miserable state of their companions, Bambietta Bastabaron and Dorisk Belshi felt a chill in their hearts. As a Quincy of the Stern Cross Knights, whose holy word is love. Surprisingly, he did not last a second in the hands of the enemy. All the flesh turned into bones, and even some of the bones turned into bone powder. Is this the terrible power of human Naya that defeated his majesty? It's just a puppet. It has this kind of strength. Dorisk Belshi had cold sweat on his forehead. Looking at the Hell Pen who was like a European Shinigami, he felt as if he was facing death, and fear appeared in his heart. Damn it! Bambietta Bastabayan's beautiful eyes flashed with madness, and her red wings fluttered wildly, forming red spheres one after another. Her holy word is E, and her symbolic ability is burst. She can turn everything that hits her Ryatsu into a bomb to attack. Under the attack of the red spiritual light balls in the sky, crackling roars came from all directions, and the entire team's buildings were destroyed. Seeing this scene, Byakuya Kuchiki and Abarai Renji's pupils contracted. Because Bambietta Bastabayan was just teasing them, they didn't know how strong this woman was. Until now, they realized that the fighting power of this woman in front of them was extremely strong even among the captains. Wang Yenling Ligum. Despite the fear in his heart, Dorisk Belshi still launched Chojiro Sasaki's Bankai. A sky full of lightning formed and attacked Hellpath Pain. Then came 3 concrete soul-slashing swords. In response, Hell Pain, controlled by Kie, just swung his double-edged axe coldly. At the same time, his free left hand formed a seal. Summoning technique Yama. Behind Hell Pain controlled by Kie, the ferocious Yama slowly rose from the ground, opened his mouth and stuck out Yama's tongue. After a glance, Kie looked at Dorisk Belshi and said, "Do you want to kill you? Watch. The Yama of Hell Pain will pull out the tongue of a liar." And Kie felt that although the members of the Holy Cross Knights submitted to Yuwatch, it did not mean that they also submitted to Yuwatch in their hearts. After all, in front of Yuwatch's holiness, their lives could be taken away at any time. Any normal person would definitely have some ideas. But under the tyranny of Yuwatch, they dared not say it out even if they had ideas. And that is, lying in front of the King of Hell. As expected, after hearing what Kie said, Dorisk Belshi's face changed drastically, and he cursed. "Damn kid, what are you talking about? His Majesty is the King of Quincy. How could I have evil thoughts about His Majesty?" "You lied." Kie looked at Dorisk Belshi coldly. His heart Shunin couldn't help but sneer. Sure enough, if Yuwatch was not the King of Quincy, he could control the lives of all Quincy at will. These Quincy would definitely be the first to betray him. Lying. Dorisk Belshi showed a look of astonishment. He didn't understand what Kie meant. But he soon knew. "I saw the King of Hell behind Kie, the huge purple tongue extended infinitely, like a whip, and the end was in the shape of a palm." When the King of Hell extended his tongue, Dorisk Belshi's face suddenly changed. He opened his mouth uncontrollably. The tongue seemed to be pulled out by invisible force. At this moment, Dorisk Belshi's face was hideous and he felt extremely painful, but his tongue was still stretched. Ah! Accompanied by a desperate roar, the purple tongue of the King of Hell grabbed the end of his tongue. With a sudden force, his tongue extended to about 2 meters. The pain made his eyes almost pop out. The tongue was also pulled off. Plop! Dorisk Belshi's body fell heavily, without any breath, and until death, his face was still twitching due to the severe pain. Seeing such a miserable death, several people present felt suffocated. Died by having her tongue torn off by the 4.2 life. Before death, her tongue was even pulled to a length of 2 meters. What a pain it must have been. Abarai Renji swallowed his saliva and said in a dry voice, "I will never fight with Nanaya's puppets again." In his opinion, these puppets of Naya are even more terrifying than Naya himself. Every one of them is a master at torturing people. Bambietta Bastabayan's beautiful eyes flashed with fear, her calves in stockings retreated, and she looked at the concrete soul-slaying sword. "Stop them for me, don't let them chase me." After saying that, she jumped away desperately. In response, Naya smiled coldly at the corner of her mouth, looked at the cruel female Quincy, and said, "Don't be in a hurry to leave, you should also feel the pain. People who don't feel pain can't really understand pain." Chapter 169. Kneeling and Obeying Bambietta Basta. Chapter 169. Bambietta Bastabayan kneels down and obeys. Final scene. White Emperor Sword. Senbon Sakura, who looks like a red armored warrior, uses Senbon Sakura's strongest killing move. Rows of Sakura-colored sword blades appear around him. At the same time, a Sakura-colored sword blade appears in his hand, infusing all of Senbonsakura's spiritual power into it, bursting out with dazzling white light. Baboon Bone Cannon. The Monkey Woman and Snake Man, who are the embodiment of Snakebone Maru, control the skeleton snake, open their bloody mouths, and infuse their spiritual power into their servants. A powerful laser is suddenly shot out, Cat Rondo. The Catgirl, who is the embodiment of Heineka, swings the blade in her hand, and countless yellow sands form a tornado, with a strong sword energy. 3 attacks are like 3 natural disasters attacking Kie. Taking this opportunity, Bambietta Bastabayan fled far away with a pale face, fearing that she would be caught by Kai's puppet. Her strength was at the top of the Stern-Cross Knights, but even so, she could not easily kill 2 companions. I will die. I will definitely be killed. Bambietta Bastabayan's forehead was covered with cold sweat. Although she liked to torture others, but she didn't like to be tortured. Thinking of the scene after being aged by hell pain, her heart was filled with panic. The flesh turned into ashes, leaving only bones, and even the bones were aged to ultimate, and they could be turned into ashes with a slight fall. For a woman, it was a hellish scene. Even if she died, she didn't want to become such a dry bone. At the moment when the 3 attacks came, Kie controlled Hell Pain, who looked like a European Shinigami, and sighed for a long time. Death sigh. In an instant, the black mist surged wildly. Everything around was aging. The walls and floor tiles all turned to ashes, and the trees were shattered in an instant. It seemed as if countless years had passed in the last second. In the face of such a degree of aging, even the attacks of the 3 concrete soul-slaying swords were aged to nothingness. Hey, Captain Kuchiki. Abarai Renji looked at the scene in front of him with a tingling scalp, and couldn't help turning his head to look at Byakuya Kuchiki. When in Karakura Town, the former king of Hueco Mundo didn't seem so powerful. Byakuya Kuchiki looked at Hell Road Pain quietly, and said lightly, "It's not that this guy is powerful, it's Naya who controls him, who transmits his own spiritual power to him." Abarai Renji suddenly realized. It turns out that Naya strengthened the spiritual power of the puppet, which made the former king of Hueco Mundo have such strength. Matsumoto Rangaku couldn't help but open his mouth and said, "Just a puppet has this level of Ryatsu, then Naya. How strong is Ryatsu of the real body?" Byakuya Kuchiki and Abarai Renji were silent. Even though they all mastered it at this time Bankai, but still couldn't answer this question. Because at this time, they couldn't see Nanaya's limit at all, and the two were no longer in the same dimension. It's over. Naya controlled the double-edged axe and chopped it down, black air filled the air, and directly hit the main soul-slaying knife. The 3 materialized soul-slaying knives aged rapidly. The red armored warrior's armor peeled off and rust filled the air. The skeleton snake had cracks on its body. The materialized Heineka aged rapidly. Retracting the double-edged axe, Naya looked at the 3 people and said lightly, "Why are you still standing there? Are you going to wait for your soul-slaying knives to age and die?" Even the soul-slaying knives have a lifespan, and once they age to ultimate, they will die. At that time, Byakuya Kuchiki and the other 2 will no longer be able to use Bankai. The 3 people just reacted. Abarai Renji and Matsumoto Rangaku took a breath, fearing that his soul-slaying sword would be killed by Naya. He quickly drew out his soul-slaying sword and rushed towards his soul-slaying sword manifestation. He slashed it down without hesitation. After killing the manifestation of his soul-slaying sword, the power of the soul-slaying sword was regained. The spiritual power of the 3 people instantly surpassed before. Next. It's that woman. Kie smiled slightly, controlling Hell Road Pain and quickly leaving the courtyard of Bambietta Bastabayan. Drew. The black figure flashed by. Hurry up, and hurry up. Bambietta Bastabayan was running away in front with sweat all over her head. The red wings were flapping desperately. She looked back from time to time, fearing that the terrible, European, Shinigami would appear behind her. Too slow. A cold voice came from the front. Bambietta Bastabayan suddenly stopped, her pupils dilated, and looked at the human road Pain in front of her in disbelief. Former Gotei 13th Division 9 Captain, Tusen Kanami. No. At this time, the human path Pain Tusen Kanami slowly drew out the Soul Zan sword and said in a cold voice. It's the human path Pain. Bankai, Suzamushi final style, Yanma cricket. The boundless darkness enveloped and took on a spherical shape, instantly enveloping Bambietta Bastabayan, who was stunned in place. In the instant of being enveloped by darkness, Bambietta Bastabayan's hearing, vision, smell, and Ryatsu all disappeared, leaving only the sense of touch. Another puppet of that human. In the darkness, Bambietta Bastabayan's eyes flashed with despair. It was hard to imagine how many puppets the person had. Are all puppets at the captain level? Not daring to stay in the black space, she desperately flapped her red wings. It seemed to cause a big explosion, but she couldn't hear it at all. In this dark space, time seemed to be useless. I don't know how long it took. Bambietta Bastabayan's eyes suddenly regained vision for a moment. This made her heart extremely happy, but in this moment of vision, she saw a pair of scarlet eyes. Tsukuyomi. 470 endless blood color, enveloped Bambietta Bastabayan's eyes. When she turned around, she found that she had appeared in a blood-colored space, and her delicate body was tied to a cross. Take a closer look. There were countless crosses in this space. There was a self tied to each cross. What is this? Bambietta Bastabian struggled desperately, her arms and calves struggling frantically. But she couldn't break free from the confinement of the cross at all. While she was panicking, a black-haired boy came over from a distance, holding a soul-slaying sword, pointing the tip of the sword at her, and said with a smile. The current Tsukuyomi space has become much stronger with the improvement of my Sharingan, and it is no longer 72 hours. A full 168 hours, however, it can be used continuously for hundreds of times. FXI. Please give me more advice in the next few years. In the eyes of Bambietta Bastabian, who was terrified to the ultimate, the black-haired boy slowly stabbed the soul-slaying sword in his hand into her delicate body. Ah! The endless time of Tsukuyomi space. A moment in the outside world. Bambietta Bastabian knelt on the ground with a plop, her eyes full of tears, and ran over with a crawl. Master, I know I was wrong. Chapter 170. 6 Paths Pain on the Run, all the embodiments are gone. Chapter 176 Paths Pain Rushes, all the concrete things are gone. Wait, what happened? Abarai Renji, who came to support after taking back his soul-slaying sword, stared at the scene in front of him in amazement. Matsumoto Rangaku couldn't help rubbing his eyes. Byakuya Kuchiki's face darkened, and he couldn't help but tighten the Senbon Sakura in his hand. The cruel, extremely cruel, and somewhat pretty female Quincy actually knelt down in front of the two pains. And it was a very standard posture of a samurai getting off the seat. But because the latter was wearing a short skirt and the front of her clothes was wide open, she looked extremely sexy. The expression was so flattering that she was almost trained like a dog. Her eyes turned into a heart shape, and she wanted to kiss Pain's toes. If it wasn't for the wrong occasion, they would all suspect that Naya had done something to her, and she was about to play Aigao. I feel like you're thinking of something very rude. Naya controlled Pain and pouted. Only 1 minute has passed, what can I do? Even if I want to do something, I can't let my puppet do it for me. After mumbling, Naya stretched and explained. Don't worry, I just dragged her into the Tsukuyomi space and trained her for about 2 years. Byakuya Kuchiki's mouth twitched slightly. He knew Naya's ability, but he didn't expect it to last for 2 years. Facing 2 years of torture, he felt that almost no one could resist it, which was beyond the limit of human endurance. Well, you stabbed her with a knife for 2 years. Matsumoto Rangaku looked at Naya suspiciously, and then turned to look at Bambietta Bastabian. For some reason, she always felt that what happened in the Tsukuyomi space was not that simple. Shut up, you woman with a brain full of TS. Kie coughed and changed the subject. Since you have found the soul-slashing sword, go and support the others. The strength of Mishi is still not weak. The three could only suppress their doubts and nodded silently. In their spiritual veins, they could see countless Quincy's wreaking havoc in the Seirei, and they really needed the support of these strong men. Byakuya Kuchiki was about to talk about the captain when he was interrupted by Kai's voice. Human Dao Pain said lightly, Don't worry, I will find the old man soon, even if it means destroying the entire Seirei. Byakuya Kuchiki, Abarai Renji, Matsumoto Rangaku. Then, under the shocked gaze of the three people, a powerful Ryatsu burst out from the central area of the Seirei, and at the same time, Nanaya's voice came. The God Tree world is born. The rumbling sound echoed in the center of the Seirei. One by one, brown dragon-like tree roots broke out of the ground, turned into the figure of a wooden dragon, and pierced into the ground fiercely. Like the towering trees in the primeval forest, they rose from the ground and broke the buildings of the Seirei. The trees and tree roots multiplied and spread crazily. The floor tiles were broken, the walls were torn apart, the buildings were destroyed. The growing trees were frantically destroying the original Seirei. In just a blink of an eye, many towering trees grew in the center of the Seirei, that is, in the direction of the 46th room. It seemed to turn the solemn Seirei into a primitive jungle. Seeing this scene, Shinigami, all of them were stunned. They watched helplessly as houses were destroyed and huge trees became the main theme of the world. Similar to old man Yamamoto's Ryūjin Jakka Bankai. The only difference is that the former created an endless sea of fire, while the latter created a primeval forest. Kyoraku Shunsui on a certain street looked at the growing trees, scratched his head, and couldn't help but complain. Seeing these trees, I feel like our Shinigami has turned into monkeys. Of course, he is not the only one who sees this method. Human Dao Pain snapped his fingers and said, as long as the trees are all over the Seirei, we will definitely find those guys hiding. Byakuya Kuchiki's mouth twitched. He had already thought of what the future Seirei would look like. In a giant forest, there were countless wooden houses, and the Shinigami of each squad jumped on the trees like monkeys. Thinking of the terrible result, Byakuya Kuchiki couldn't help but close his eyes. He really didn't want to settle down on the trees. Second squad quarters. Omeda, who was almost beaten to death, blinked his eyes and looked at Shira Dao Pain in front of him as if he was dreaming. After reacting, he immediately burst into tears and rushed to Shira Dao Pain crying and shouting, Sir Naya, save me, I'm going to be killed by this guy, and our captain's soul-slaying sword also wants to kill me, stay away from me. Neutra Gilga's Shirado Pain looked at Amanita with disdain, and then he looked at the Quincy of the Stern Cross Knights opposite. He was a young man with short black hair, slender phoenix eyes, a scar on his left lip, and wearing a white Quincy robe. Seeing Shirado Pain coming to support, a blue bow and arrow appeared in his hand, and he said lightly, I am Kangdu, and the holy letter is. Shirado Pain swung a huge sickle, and violent Ryatsu burst out of his body. A hint of fanaticism appeared in his eyes, and he shouted, My name is Neutra Gilga, and now I am Shirado Pain. Quincy, fall into despair. Although he was made into pain by Naya, he seemed to have retained his former personality. Pray, holy weeping mantis. With a fanatical roar, Shirado Pain entered the return to the blade posture. There was a crescent-shaped horn on his head, and 6 amputated arms grew out, and each arm held a double-edged sickle. Then, Shirado's ability gave him 2 more arms, which were mechanical arms made of steel and fired missiles. 4th Division Barracks. Interesting, my soul-slaying sword. Yunohana Retsu's beautiful eyes flashed with enthusiasm, and she excitedly waved the soul-slaying sword in her hand. The powerful Ryatsu burst out unscrupulously. Each sword showed a variety of different swordsmanship, which was powerful enough to seriously injure Kashiwamura Sajin, but was easily, somewhat well, taken by the opponent. The figure on the opposite side was a mature woman in blood-stained clothes. In contrast to Yunohana Retsu, the mature woman in blood-stained clothes had a gentle expression, but her strikes were more ruthless than the last, and she was not inferior to Wa Lisai at all. Miss Jijin, even if you don't let me intervene, I have to quickly deal with this B***ch. This is Muramasa's order. The female Quincy in a white robe spoke. She had short golden hair, wore Quincy clothes, held an umbrella, and looked at the 2 women with a little impatience. She was a member of the Stern Cross Knights because she could appear on this battlefield. Her name was Lidodo Lampado, and her holy letter was G. Glutton, which symbolized the ability of a glutton. She was the think tank of the female Quincy. I thought that with the help of the concrete soul-slashing sword Jijin, I could quickly deal with her master. Who would have thought that this concrete soul-slashing sword had the same bloodthirsty frenzy as its master, and was not willing to let herself take action at all? Chapter 171. Shinra Tensei and Universal Pull that shred the golden clip. Chapter 171 Shinra Tensei and Universal Pull that tore the gold clip apart. What? This level is also considered steel? Neutra like Shirado Pain directly lifted up the Quincy Sudu. He looked at him with a contemptuous expression on his face. Sudu was covered in blood, and there were 3 huge knife wounds on his body that was held by the neck, and blood was spurting out. And his weapon was different from other Quincy. It was a claw blade like Wolverine. Damn it, why didn't anyone say that these hollows are so strong? Sudu gritted his teeth and cursed with a sullen face. Just after thinking of the key to the problem, he couldn't help cursing again. Damn Aizen Sōsuke. Thousands of years ago, even if it was a Manos Grande of Yajuka's level, they, the Quincy, would not take it seriously. Because the power of their Quincy is naturally strong against Manos Grande. But now it is different. After being transformed by Aizen Sōsuke, Hueco Mundo's strength has been significantly improved. It has become a force that cannot be ignored. The puppet Manos Grande in front of him was definitely a strong man even when he was alive, and he was not weaker than Captain Shinigami. Seeing that Manos Grande in front of him had raised the double-edged sickle, Kangdu gritted his teeth unwillingly and placed the fist blades of both hands on his chest. Snake Power Claw. He infused all his Ryatsu into the claw blade. It burst out with a dazzling blue light. As the blue light reached ultimate, it burst out with a blue lion majesty like light to attack. Idiot, are you still desperate? Shirado Pain sneered, and the 2 mechanical arms on his shoulders stretched out, directly blocking the blue snake like light. Boom. With a deafening roar. The mechanical arm had cracks, but it still blocked this move. Steel that is harder than me. Sangdu's eyes were about to burst, and he watched helplessly as 6 giant scythes came to kill him. Abu, do. The sound of the blade cutting through the flesh was heard. The Stern Cross Knights, whose holy letter is I, fell heavily. Although his ability is steel, but he fell to Shirado Painsu who has mechanical ability. Omeda almost cried, and ran over to hug Kai's thigh. Master Kie, it has to be you. If it weren't for you, I would have been killed. Just now faced this terrible enemy. The 5 elements of his head after Shikai were all cut off, ADCE. Kie controlled Shirado Pain and pouted, holding a golden elf in his hand, saying, Don't talk nonsense, this little thing still hurts me. I'll go find Suifeng first, you find a place to hide. Hearing this, Omeda glanced at the golden elf in Kai's hand and swallowed his saliva. Master Kie, that's the captain's soul-slaying sword, 2 hits to kill. From his perspective, the golden elf is like a queen bee, cute and arrogant, but with a near-death danger. He desperately used the bee sting in his hand to stab Kie, leaving a series of bee patterns on his body. It was originally a terrible ability to kill with 2 hits. But he got a comment that Naya was hurt. This monster is getting stronger and stronger. Even the captain may not be his opponent. Omeda muttered in his heart, Muramasa? After hearing what Lidodo Lampado said, Hana Retsu's soul-slaying swords were all gone. Although he was unwilling, he nodded silently. Okay, get rid of this woman as soon as possible. She is Hana Retsu's soul-slaying sword, and has the same memory as her master. She also masters 8,000 kinds of terrible sword techniques. She wanted to kill her opponent with sword techniques and Bankai, but she still couldn't take down Hana Retsu. Good. Lidodo Lampado nodded slightly, and praised the demon sword Muramasa in her heart. She really didn't expect that there was such an outrageous existence in Shinigami's soul-slaying sword, which could actually exist independently. It can exert its ability without the help of its master's power. It can also bewitch Shinigami's soul-slaying sword. After Aizen Sōsuke's help, it merged with the power of the Hollow, and its bewitching ability was enhanced, and it could even make the soul-slaying sword obey his orders. It is stronger than our star. If you can capture the soul-slaying sword of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, your Majesty's fighting power will definitely be greatly enhanced. She thought so in her heart, and said with a violent ryatsu bursting out of her body. Perfect holy body hyphenation point God's muscle. Without the slightest hesitation, she directly used the strongest ability of the Quincy, ready to take the lead and defeat this terrible woman. A golden five-pointed star appeared above her head, and a pair of spirit wings formed by golden spiritual power stretched out from her back in a jagged shape. After entering this posture, Lidodo Lampado pointed her right hand at Hana Retsu and said lightly. Fork. The golden ryatsu burst out. The golden ryatsu formed a crown with sharp edges and corners, turning into golden light, and quickly rushed towards Hana Retsu attacked. The latter's beautiful eyes were fanatical, and she subconsciously wanted to use the blade to block the attack. Clang. The sound of metal clashing rang out. The blood-shaped Jijin, with a gentle face, blocked this move with the blade. Master, this is not okay. Now I have gained freedom, and I no longer need you, but don't worry. As she said, the graceful figure cast by blood, waving the soul-slaying sword in her hand, said. After you die, I will inherit your will, kill all the Shinigami, and enjoy the highest level of fighting and killing. Abu. The golden light flashed. The sharp crown at the end hit Hana Retsu's abdomen fiercely, and blood flowed down her lower abdomen, but it made the latter more fanatical. Ah, this kind of battle, this is not enough. My soul-slaying sword, you should give me some more comfortable wounds. Hana Retsu couldn't help licking her lips. The blood-colored Jijin's face was still gentle. The soul-slaying sword in his hand was made of blood, like a whip, and he slashed at the opponent without hesitation. Lidodo Lampado also took the opportunity to cooperate with him, condensing knives, forks, swords, axes, and other weapons to kill Hana Retsu. After a while, Hana Retsu was already covered in blood, and his body was slightly weak, but his expression was still fanatical and excited. As expected of my soul-slaying sword. I'm so annoyed, B*ch, just go and die. Lidodo Lampado cursed, looking at Hana Retsu angrily. She had never seen such a woman, who was so excited after such an injury. She was much stronger than the ordinary Shinigami captain. If it weren't for the help of soul-slaying sword, she would not be a match. Looking at Hana Retsu who could still fight, she gritted her teeth and yelled. Golden clamp. The powerful golden ryatsu surged, forming a golden weapon like a trap in the air. It appeared under Hana Retsu's feet. 014501503 Philo 1920111241. Suddenly closed. Just when Hana Retsu's body was about to be cut off. Universal pull. Shinra Tensai, in the distance. The figure floating in the air spoke indifferently, and his left and right hands burst out with attraction and repulsion at the same time. The golden clamp that could cut off the captain was broken into pieces. Chapter 171. Ryūjin Jakka is on the run, and old man Yamamoto is seriously injured. Chapter 171 Ryūjin Jakka ran away, and the seriously injured old man Yamamoto. Is it Naya? No, it's a puppet. Hana Retsu's soul-slaying swords were all gone, her face changed, and she turned her head to look at the figure in the sky. As Hana Retsu's soul-slaying sword, she was naturally familiar with Naya, and knew the terrible power contained in the body of this human boy. Not to mention herself, even if Ryūjin Jakka came, he might not be able to beat him. Manos Grande, Ajukas. Lidodo Lampado looked at Tendo Pain solemnly. She could clearly feel that the other party was only a Manos Grande at the Ajuka's level, but the oppression she gave her was more than Vasto Lord. TTRE. Hearing what Jia-jin said, Lidodo Lampado looked at her in surprise, but found that this battle-loving embodiment of the soul-slashing sword was trembling slightly and kept following her. Run, you can't beat this guy. Leaving behind such a sentence, Jia-jin's figure turned into a blood-red color and flew into the sky. Lidodo Lampado felt creepy immediately, and looked at the figure of Tendo Pain again, with a trace of fear in her eyes. She knew Jia-jin's strength. The other party perfectly inherited Hana Retsu's Ryatsu, possessed the ability of Bankai, and even used Hana Retsu's 8,000 swords. Such a powerful soul-slashing sword was embodied. But he didn't even have the courage to fight that figure. How strong is that enemy? Unlike other Quincy, Lidodo Lampado took a deep breath and spread his wings without hesitation to fly away. Looking at the two people running away, Geo Weiger like Tendo Pain, with purple Rinnegan fluctuations, stretched out his right hand and said. Very smart, but this is far from enough, universal pull. The powerful traction force burst out. It directly acted on the two people running away, causing their faces to change drastically and their bodies to fly back uncontrollably. Impossible. How can a mere Ijuka's level Manos Grande have such terrible power? Lido do Lampado said in shock. She is a member of the Stern Cross Knights and after using the holy body. She can't even run away. I am Tendo Pain. Tendo Pain's mouth slightly raised a little arc. Although unlike other Pains, he does not have particularly strong power, but as Tendo Pain, he can get the most Ryatsu from his body. Enough to crush most of the Stern Cross Knights. The two women's fleeing figures were forcibly pulled back. When the two women were pulled to the feet of Tendo Pain and were about to fight back, Tendo Pain said coldly. Shinra Tensai. Boom. The violent repulsive force exploded. It acted on the two women and smashed them directly into the ground. No matter how they struggled, they couldn't stand up. Sister Wa, take back your soul sword. Kie turned to look at Yunohana Retsu. The latter licked her lips, excitedly watching her soul-slashing sword materialize, and said in a slightly fanatical voice. Kie, I don't want to kill her. I like this kind of guy who can hurt me. Let her keep this form. Sister Wa. Kie looked at Yunohana Retsu speechlessly. He was really speechless about this masochistic character. Of course, he was just speechless at ordinary times. When in bed, the masochistic character of Jinjiwa Retsu was not very interesting. Just at this moment, in a corner of the Jingling, brilliant. The violent flames shot up into the sky. The raging fire spread across the prairie, as if even the sky had turned red, and the scorching air filled the sky above the Jingling court. Everything will be reduced to ashes, Ryūjin Jakka. The violent voice resounded through the sky, and a flame-like demon figure could be vaguely seen in the scorching flames. The other party held Ryūjin Jakka. An unrivaled flame burst out. In the center of the Seirei, on the towering tree formed by wood style. Kie sat on it, looked at the flames in the sky, raised his eyebrows and said with interest. This is really hiding far away, running to the Mao execution ground. If I'm not mistaken, this shouldn't be the soul-slaying sword used by old man Yamamoto. Although the voice was violent, he was sure that it should be old man Yamamoto's Ryūjin Jakka. Did his soul-slaying sword defect? Kai's mouth curled up a little arc, and his figure instantly disappeared above the tree. It's over. Kyoraku Shunsui, who was running in the Seirei to rescue the Shinigami team members, suddenly stopped and looked at the fire in the sky, and said with a headache. The old man's Zan soul sword also betrayed. This is really not good news. The captain's Zan soul sword, Aizen Sōsuke's Ryatsu, and Yuacha's Ryatsu, are all over there. Jashiro Yukitaki's expression was solemn, and he rushed over there without saying a word. The enemy also has to add a Ryūjin Jakka, which can be Bankai. Kashiwamura Sajin had a headache, at the same time. 0. Asking for flowers, Seirei, square root Bing. The figure of Ugrin Hasward, a member of the Stern Cross Knights, emerged from the shadows and looked at the fire in the distance. Your Majesty's plan has been successful, we have to go to support quickly. As he said, he looked at the people behind him and said. Our next enemy is the Soul King Palace and that terrible human, are you ready? What nonsense are you talking about? A familiar electric sound sounded. It was the white in Kurosaki Ichigo's body. He was seen carrying Zanjetsu, with a fanatical expression on his face, and Yanin said. Now I can't wait to kill Naya, I must make that guy pay the price. Although it was the voice of white, it was completely different from the pure white color of the past. Not only did his hair turn black, he even wore a black windbreaker, Ryatsu became stronger and more oppressive. And behind him, there were several materialized soul-slashing swords. They were Urahara Kazuki and some members of the Masked Corps Soul Zanjetsu, all of which were materialized and had the posture of Bankai. After hearing what Kyobaku said, Yugaran Hashwald nodded silently. He felt a little more apprehensive about Aizen Sōsuke. What a scary guy. He actually let him take Muramasa to the real world and bewitched all the Soul Zanjetsu there to betray. There were 7 or 8 captain-level combat forces. Especially Kurosaki Ichigo's Soul Zanjetsu, the combat power displayed by the opponent made him, the strongest of the Stern Cross Knights, feel apprehensive. Tensa Zanjetsu? Muttering to himself, Yugaran Hashwald no longer hesitated and quickly rushed to the center of the battlefield with several materialized Soul Zanjetsu. Mao execution ground, Sokyoku stage. Aizen Sōsuke and Yawach looked at the seriously injured Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni indifferently. The latter said indifferently, you actually sealed yourself with a barrier to prevent the betrayal of the soul-slaying sword. Genryusai, you are really amazing. Aizen Sōsuke smiled and said, in order to hide the fact that Naya broke the barrier, it took us a lot of effort. At this time, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. He had arrow wounds, knife wounds, and burns on his body. He fell to the ground and breathed heavily, he had no power to resist. Seeing him like this, Uebach glanced at the figure in the firelight and said, die under your own soul-slaying sword, Genki. After that, he said to the concrete Ryūjin Jakka, Kill him. Ryūjin Jakka. Chapter 172. The Manifestation of Ryūjin Jakka, the Most Dangerous 3. Chapter 172. The Embodiment of Ryūjin Jakka, the Most Dangerous 3 People. Aizen, you watch. Ryūjin Jakka, old man Yamamoto lay on the ground, his eyes furiously looking at the 3 figures opposite. At this moment, his heart was full of unwillingness. If he hadn't noticed that the situation of the soul-slaying sword Ryūjin Jakka was not right at the first time, he came to the Mao execution ground to seal himself. Ryūjin Jakka would definitely betray at the first time. But because of this, he didn't fight against Aizen Sōsuke and Yuacha's combination. If Ryūjin Jakka didn't betray, even if he faced the combination of these 2 guys, he would have the confidence to defeat them with Bankai. Goodbye, Captain General. Aizen Sōsuke looked at Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni with a slight smile. After you die, I will go to the Soul King Palace and let Lingchu accompany you. While he was speaking, in the flames, a figure holding Ryūjin Jakka, whose whole body was condensed by flames, slowly drew out the Zanhun sword. Torch. His voice was as violent as flames. It was the embodiment of Ryūjin Jakka. The ability used was also the move of Ryūjin Jakka. The Zanhun sword was unsheathed, and the moment the words came out, violent flames burst out on the blade. The sky was full of flames and attacked in the shape of blades. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni could only see the sky full of flames, and at the same time, there was a high temperature that was enough to burn people to ashes. At this moment, the old man Yamamoto's eyes were wide open. He never thought that as the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years, he also had the strongest and oldest Zanhun sword Ryūjin Jakka in the flame system. He would die under his own sword, burned to ashes by the flames. Just the moment when old man Yamamoto's beard was ignited and he felt his skin and flesh burn. In the sky, several red paper cranes flew in the flames, vivid and alive. Then, the red dry paper cranes disappeared. Kai's figure appeared in front of the sky, with his hands in his pockets, looking down at the seriously injured Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni who had been ignited by the flames. He couldn't help but laugh and tease. Stinky old man, you look so embarrassed, do you want to perform a magic of being burned by flames? Old man Yamamoto's eyes lit up, then he was very angry at Kai's words. What magic? I'm going to be roasted, okay. Even though there were 3 powerful enemies around him, Kie didn't care at all, but continued to tease. If you want to perform fire magic, I suggest you get more audiences. Old man Yamamoto said with a sullen face, little devil, can't you see that I'm about to be roasted? Hurry up and save me. After saying that, old man Yamamoto felt like vomiting blood. Why would he ask for help from humans? Is this his personality? No way. After thinking about it carefully, old man Yamamoto had a sad answer in his heart. I seem to be used to being rescued by Kie. As the saying goes, the first time is new, the second time is familiar. Since the last time Kie rescued him, he has no shame of being rescued by humans. Quadruple A. Kie couldn't help laughing twice and said, why didn't you say that earlier? Why are you as shy as my woman? Is this the old man Tsunere? Tien Li Shou. In an instant, Kai's figure was swapped with old man Yamamoto's. Old man Yamamoto appeared in the sky. Nanaya's words still lingered in his mind. This 1,000-year-old old Shinigami, I don't know whether he was angry or embarrassed. In short, his face was red. Shut up, kid, I'm just not used to asking humans for help, don't add insult to injury here. Nanaya's figure appeared in the firelight, ignoring old man Yamamoto's rebuttal, with his mouth curled up, and his right hand pointed at the burning flame and said, Amaterasu. Flame control. Fire burst out from the Sharingan of the Samsara world, which was different from the flame of Ryūjin Jakka, showing black, quietly burning flames. The black immortal flame actually ignited the red flame. Flame burned flame. The scene seemed unusually incredible. And with the control of flame control, the black immortal flame exploded, turning into a black sea of fire, competing with the flames. Black flames, ignited my flames? Looking at the eternal flame that suppressed his flames, Ryūjin Jakka in the flames instantly became furious. As the strongest and oldest Zanpakuto in the flame system, he is quite proud and will never allow other flames to surpass him. Nanaye retracted his gaze, skipped Aizen Sōsuke and Yuacha, and looked at the figure in the flames with interest. Is this the embodiment of Ryūjin Jakka, compared to other soul-slaying swords? The embodiment of Ryūjin Jakka is condensed by flames, with a flame-like body and eyes formed by white flames. It looks like a demon condensed by flames. Brutality, explosion, burning, fury, arrogance, conceit. Has all the characteristics of fire. Looking at the soul-slaying knife in front of him, Kie looked at old man Yamamoto and teased. Stinky old man, looking at the embodiment of your soul-slaying knife, I can imagine your personality 8,000 years ago. The soul-slaying knife can be said to be the embodiment of the Shinigami soul. Ryūjin Jakka has such a tyrannical appearance and is inseparable from the personality of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Presumably, 8,000 years ago, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's personality was also like a flame. However, after 1,000 years, I am afraid that no matter how hot-tempered the old man is, his hot-tempered personality has gradually calmed down over time. Old man Yamamoto has regained his composure at this time, and did not care about Kai's teasing. He reminded in a deep voice. Little ghost, be careful, the strength of these three guys is not weak, even if I am in my prime, I may not be able to win. Aizen Sōsuke is needless to say. He has broken the boundary between Shinigami and Hollow, and has the power to transcend the dimension. In the war in Karakura Town, if Naya had not arrived in time, the Shinigami side would definitely have ended up in a disastrous defeat. Ryūjin Jakka is not to be mentioned. That is the embodiment of his soul-slaying sword, which is equivalent to another him. He has his memories, his Ryatsu, his combat experience, and can use Bankai, which he cannot use now. As for Yawatch, this is the most dangerous enemy. In the battle just now, the opponent showed his omniscience and omnipotence, and even he used a cremation knife and did not hurt the opponent. 3 enemies, no matter which one is strong, 5.2 is ridiculous. These 3 joined forces, making him feel an unusually heavy pressure, which is thousands of times more dangerous than the battle 1,000 years ago. You can hold them back for a while, and wait for the people from the Zero Squad to come to support. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni gave his own advice. He really didn't believe that Bai Yi could defeat these 3 enemies. It would be better to wait for Yamato from the Zero Division to come. You are so annoying. Naya pouted, interrupted the old man Yamamoto, and said with a smile, do you think I am as arrogant as you? Of course I will wait for others to come to support. Just at this time, the Shinigami of the Seirei rushed over. Kyoka Suigetsu shouted, Naya, wait for us, we will help you right away. Naya. Are you here to die? Naya's mouth twitched, and he looked at them with dead fish eyes. Who gave you the confidence to help me? Chapter 173. A one-shot fight, the Spying Zero Squad. Chapter 173. The Battle of Instant Kills, the Peeping Zero Division. Kyoka Suigetsu's mouth twitched slightly. He was a captain after all, and a disciple of Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, and his strength was the strongest among the captains. As a result, coming to support was not despised. But after scanning the enemies present, Kyoka Suigetsu immediately understood the meaning of Naya's words, and a trace of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. So, they are all here. Aizen Sōsuke, Yawatch, and the concrete Ryoto Falling Fire. The 3 of them represent the strongest of the 3 forces. Aizen Sōsuke represents the strongest of Hōgyoku Mundo. Yawatch is the strongest representing the Quincy. Ryūjin Jakka is the strongest representing the Shinigami. Compared with these 3, he really looks like he is here to die. Aizen Sōsuke. When Kashiwamura arrived, he immediately spotted Aizen Sōsuke, and his eyes instantly burst into boundless anger. It was because of this guy that his best friend Tusen Kanami betrayed him. He even became a puppet controlled by Naya. At the moment when his spiritual power burst out, Kashiwamura waved the soul-slaying sword without hesitation and shouted. Bankai Black Robe Heaven 03 condemned Mingwang. The soul-slaying sword that had just been taken back exploded, and the giant black armored martial god rose from the ground, waving the blade in his hand and slashing down. Aizen Sōsuke smiled softly, turned to look at Yawatch, and asked, how about it, do you need this Bankai? Yawatch looked at the Black Robe Heavenly Punishment King indifferently, stretched out his right hand, and said lightly. Such a weak Bankai is not qualified to be taken away by me. The Bankai that he can take a fancy to must at least be at the level of Kyoka Suigetsu. Kashiwamura-Sajan's Bankai is too weak. He never summoned his own spirit bow. Yawatch just pointed his right index finger at the top of the head of the Black Robe Heavenly Punishment King, and a dazzling blue light burst out. A blue arrow shot out like a white thunder, ha! Kashiwamura-Sajan roared. Controlling the Black Robe Heavenly Punishment King, he swung a knife with all his strength. Crack! The tearing sound of metal clashing sounded. I saw that countless spider web-like cracks burst out from the big sword held by the Black Robe Heavenly Punishment King. It seemed that it would break in the next second. Kashiwamura-Sajan's pupils dilated to ultimate, and his feet could not help but step back, looking at the cracks on the blade in disbelief. I can't even take this kind of attack. He witnessed the battle between Yawatch and Naya during the war in Karakura Town in the present world. The opponent used a super large spirit bow and shot more than thousands of arrows, but they were all easily destroyed by Naya's fairy art. And when it came to him, it was just a small spirit bow and just one arrow. It almost broke his Black Robe Heavenly Punishment King. Kashiwamura-Sajan is here. Kashiwamura-Sajan is defeated. Naya couldn't help but complain, and at the same time, he looked at Yawatch with the Samsara Sharingan. Sage Art Rain Release Light Fang. The dazzling white light shot out like an arrow. Yawatch's face changed. He was not at all careless about the attack of this human. The Quincy in his hand flashed a wave. Ordinary Quincy can summon a bow with their Quincy. But Yawatch's Quincy summoned a black sword with extremely strong Ryatsu and a sense of oppression that could destroy everything. Aiming at the oncoming storm release Light Fang, he slashed down with the black knife without hesitation. Boom! There was an explosion in the sky. A violent shockwave burst out from the center of the collision between the two. The largest Black Robe Heavenly Punishment Ming Wang was the first to be affected, and his huge body staggered uncontrollably and fell to the ground. Boom. Looking at the black rope heavenly punishment Ming Wong falling to the ground, Kyoraku Shunsui couldn't help but say in the strong wind. No way, just the aftermath has such a degree of impact, now we don't even have the qualifications to watch the game. His strength is much stronger than Kashiwamura Sajin. But even so, he still felt like he was about to be blown away. Well, he's getting stronger again. Aizen Sōsuke narrowed his eyes and looked at Naya, a trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes, and he said in a deep voice. I can feel that he has made another step on the road of transcending dimensions, and can almost control the world around him. The Soul King seems to be such an existence. If he continues to grow stronger like this human may become the second Soul King, an uncontrolled Soul King. Yabok became more and more solemn, and said in a deep voice. Aizen, it's your turn. The reason why he wanted to cooperate with Aizen Sōsuke was because he saw the terrible power contained in the body of this Shinigami. When he was completely out of control, Aizen Sōsuke's power was only one level weaker than his. I know. Aizen Sōsuke nodded. The power to break the boundary between Shinigami and Hollow emerged, and the wings of Hollow burst out from the body of Shinigami, condensing a violent Ryūjin. 7 or 8 hideous white skeletons appeared on the wings, and they opened their mouths at Naya at the same time. In them, highly compressed spirit particles gathered. Ultimate radiation break. As Aizen Sōsuke finished speaking, the spirit power in the mouths of 7 or 8 white skeletons burst out, attacking Naya like lasers. Ryūjin Jakka also swung the knife at the right time, roaring violently. Songming. 2 terrible attacks came at the same time. Facing this 383-degree attack, Naya's face still changed color, but he stretched out his hand and said lightly. Uchiha rebound. The long-lost Uchiha fan appeared in his hand. The moment the 2 attacks hit the fan, they were rebounded by the fan. Not good. Aizen Sōsuke's face changed. He didn't expect Naya to be able to rebound even this level of attack. He wanted to use splitting void or retreat, but before he could make a move, the furious Ryūjin Jakka couldn't help but attack Naya first, and the flames were overwhelming. Bankai. Zanka Tachi. Ryūjin Jakka entered the Bankai posture. The high temperature inside the center of the sun melted the attack that bounced back. At the same time, in the Soul King Palace, in the Zero Squad. Yamato Ichibe Hayasabi Shu, Taro Senjumaru, Hakafuna Kiryu, Kirinji Tenshiro, Nimaya Uyue. The 5 people looked at the screen in front of them with serious eyes. What a terrible guy, let them kill each other first. Yamato Ichibe Hayasabi muttered to himself. The other members of the Zero Squad nodded one after another, expressing their great approval. Just at this moment, Naya's figure appeared in front of their eyes. The other party curled the corner of his mouth and smiled at them. Are you coming over, or should I send these people over? Chapter 174. The Power of You Watch, the Dark-Skinned Beauty arrives. Chapter 174. The Power of You Watch, the Dark-Skinned Beauty attacks. The 5 powerful Shinigami were dumbfounded. In their observation, any one of the enemies in the Seirei now has the power to destroy the world. Except for Yamato, they have no confidence in defeating any of them. Even if it is a concrete Ryūjin Jakka, whose strength is not as good as Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's body, it can still easily destroy a few of them. After all, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni's Bankai has a kind of fire that can destroy the world. So, they plan to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Anyway, for them, whether it is Aizen Sōsuke, Yuwatch, or even Naya, they are all unstable factors. No matter who is seriously injured, it is good news for the Zero Division. It's not the body. Nimaya Wangyue looked at Naya in front of him, frowned, and said inconceivably, it's a crow. The Naya in front of him was condensed by a crow. Crow. Shudoro Senjumaru was stunned for a moment, as if he thought of something, and quickly looked up at the position of the sun in the sky. It didn't matter if he looked at it. The faces of several people present suddenly changed. Because the sun in the sky disappeared at some point, and was replaced by a blood-red moon, with a few Magatama faintly visible. Is the power of the spirit an illusion? Kirinji Tenshiro looked at the sky in doubt. I don't know, but his ability should be able to hypnosis us on a large scale. Denjo Kiryu's voice revealed a solemnity. Yamato thought for a while, and said in a deep voice. His ability covers the entire Jinglingding, and even breaks through the defense of the Soul King Palace. Then what should we do? Do we really have to help him? Nimiwu Wangyue interrupted Yamato's words, frowning and said. But Aizen Sōsuke, Uebok, their 2 goals are the Soul King. If we go to the Seirei, will it give them a chance? You all know the importance of the Soul King. If the Soul King is destroyed, all 3 worlds will be destroyed. While they were discussing, Aizen Sōsuke, Yuwatch, and Ryūjin Jakka had already launched an attack on Naya at the same time. Countless Sero, countless blue arrows, overwhelming flames, each attack gave people the sense of facing death. I still have to get rid of you first, Tieni-kun, Aizen Sōsuke said with a smile. Facing this terrible human, he no longer had confidence. If he didn't get rid of this guy, he always felt that something bad would happen. Looking at this level of attack, Kyoraku Shunsui and others changed their faces. This is really too bad. Although they believed in Naya's strength, the three people on the opposite side were not weak, and they all had the power to destroy the Seirei. The Captain General might not be able to beat them in his prime. Thinking of this, Kyoka Shinsei turned to look at his companions and said in a deep voice, "No matter what, we have to stop at least one. Under the premise of not using the soul-slashing sword, we can only use Kido first." The Shinigami present nodded. Finally, they set their sights on Yuwatch, thinking that this guy was the most troublesome, and raised their right hands and chanted. Beast bones scattered everywhere, spires, red crystals, steel wheels. The moving one is the wind, and the still one is the sky. The sound of the long spears hitting each other resounded throughout the empty city. Hado number 63 Fiery Lightning Hell. The Lord. The mask of flesh and blood, the one who is the universe. The one who flaps his wings. The one who is crowned with the name of man. Carve the twin lotuses on the wall of blue fire, and wait for the abyss of fire in the distant sky. Hado number 73 Twin Lotus Blue Fire Drop. The turbid emblems are faintly visible, and the talents are unruly and arrogant. The tide, negation, paralysis, and a moment hinder the long sleep. The crawling steel princess, the clay doll that keeps hurting itself. Combined, rebounded, and extended to the ground, know your own powerlessness. Hado number 90 Black Coffin, a variety of dazzling Hado bursts. Golden lightning, pale blue flames, cubes like black spears, hit Yuwatch in the sky at the same time. But as companions, Aizen Sōsuke and Ryūjin Jakka only took a glance and retracted their gazes. Because they knew that this level of Kido would not hurt Yuwatch. After all, he claimed to be omniscient and omnipotent. As expected, Yuwatch in the black cube just swung the black knife in his hand and chopped all the oncoming Kido into pieces. What? Kyoka Shinsei and others' pupils shrank. They did not expect that their full strength attack could not hurt Yuwatch at all. I've said it before. Yuwatch looked at the Shinigami present indifferently. All power is useless in front of me. My name is Yuwatch, the one who controls all power. As he said, he stretched out his right hand and pointed it at Kyoka Shinsei, Sui Feng and others. At this moment, Kyoka Shinsei, Sui Feng and others were filled with ominous thoughts. Shunon Thunder Beast battle form. Accompanied by the angry shout of a woman, a black figure flashed. Shihuan Yoruichi suddenly appeared beside Yuwatch. She was only wearing a black bodysuit and stockings, revealing her seductive skin. Her back was almost exposed, and her thighs were almost visible. When squatting, she showed her plump buttocks. What a dark-skinned beauty. 014501503 Falu 192,021,221. I saw this dark-skinned beauty clenching her fists, bursting out dazzling lightning, and punching Yuwatch fiercely. Yuwatch's face suddenly changed, and his body flew out uncontrollably. What a great strength! He looked at Shihuan Yoruichi with a little surprise. The latter's figure flashed and appeared beside Sui Feng, picked him up, no Qian Zhao, and retreated to a distance. Kie couldn't help blinking. Wow, beautiful back and beautiful legs, dark skin and white skin, it's Yoruichi and Sui Feng. This really gives people a very strong sense of contrast. He was not surprised by Shihuan Yoruichi's power, because that was the strange power punch he taught Shihuan Yoruichi. The strange power plus Shihuan Yoruichi's speed greatly increased the strength of this dark-skinned beauty. Sensing Naya's gaze, Shihuan Yoruichi couldn't help but glare at him. Why didn't you call me here before? If she hadn't come to Hueco Mundo by herself, she really wouldn't have known that the situation had reached this point. While dealing with Aizen Sōsuke and Ryūjin Jakka, Naya Yoruichi said helplessly. You were so tired at the time, I was embarrassed to call you. Hearing this, Shihuan Yoruichi blushed and couldn't help but look at the red marks on his body. Damn little devil.